Okay, I'm here for another episode of Reflections, and this episode is going to be with the guest Maikelele, obviously of numerous teams in CSGO, most notably NIP, and then G2/FaZe/Kinguin. We know all the different names of that team mainly. So actually I want to start the interview by asking you about your time in 1.6, because I know like a number of players in the Swedish scene. I mean, there wasn't many Source players, obviously, from Sweden. You were a 1.6 player, and I saw on Wikipedia they list some teams that are teams that people know the name of, like Big Rip, ICSU, but the difference is these aren't like the lineups that people necessarily remember, though. So were you just like a semi-pro player in 1.6? Like how... Did you play with any good players people might have heard of? What was your involvement in 1.6? I assume at the time you would have been pretty young, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's a long time ago. Well, I played in Big Reap for, I don't know, like a month before they disbanded, like the whole organization disbanded.
Right.
And I don't know, they contacted us, if I can remember it correctly, they contacted us after we went to this... Swedish tournament with all the best teams, and the winner goes to, I think it was ESWC.
Ah, okay.
This is a long time ago.
Yes.
And we had a stand-in, and it was Moddy, and yeah, we both know he was a beast in 1.6,
sure,
right? Yeah. And we managed to win against the team that eventually won that qualifier or tournament and went to ESWC, and we did a pretty good result, like in general. So I think that I can't remember if it was this exactly, if it was like exactly like this, but it's something around there because that's a long time ago.
Okay. And did it, and in 1.6, obviously, like I said, I think at the time you would have only been like 18 or 19 around the time we're talking about right now. Like in the Swedish scene, this is something that's actually missing from CSGO, is there isn't really much of like what you call in English a grassroots scene, like, you know, a scene that comes up from the ground up, like beginning players get into small teams and then they go to LANs. Like obviously back in the day, it was Rendezvous and Birdie Land, wherever you live in Sweden, basically, you go to the nearby LANs and they have lots of bring your own computer LANs. And the good thing about these tournaments is, even if you're like a player just getting into the competitive scene, you can maybe play against a mixed team that has, as you say, Moddy or Get Right and, you know, Threat. There'll be a whole bunch of players who are pro players who'll play in either a mixed team or maybe they'll play with some friends, you know. And it was usually a way that you could kind of tell who the next talents are going to be, because you trace everyone back. Eventually they all start there. Like, if you were around that kind of level, were you actually someone who was committed to trying to be good in CS 1.6? Like if CSGO had never come out, would you have kept training, trying to become a pro in 1.6?
I mean, I always tried, right? I always had a big passion for CS, and I always played CS for my entire life since I was like 9 or 8. But in 1.6, it was so hard to become a pro, especially in Sweden when you had Fnatic, you had SK, and yeah, way back you had NIP. It was, I don't know, it was like, it felt like the whole scene in Sweden was kind of like, like locked. You couldn't do anything. Like if you knew people in the pro teams, you might had a chance to try out or whatever. But for me personally, I didn't know anyone. The best player I knew was, I think it was like, Moddy or something. And he just played with us for one tournament. But yeah, I wanted to go pro, but I had no clue how to do it. So I stopped play CS for 6 months. I moved to Latvia, Riga, to work there with my cousin and with my best friend.
Okay.
And then when I came back home, they released CSGO, and I started to play CSGO. Yeah. So from there, yeah.
Okay. So people actually might not remember this because they think of you because they think of LGB came around. Like that still feels like it was early in CSGO, but it wasn't really. It was like the latter part of 2013. So we'd already had like a year of the game basically. But I noticed in the first like year or so of the game, you weren't really involved in like the competitive teams, etc. Like who were the people who was like your crew in the early days of CSGO, and how did you transition to getting into, well, when LGB came around basically? Because I remember, wasn't LGB also basically a bunch of other players who also were like from a similar background, right? They were all like in the like end of 1.6 and kind of the semi-pro scene, going to the small lands, wherever Inferno Online, etc. But no one was really a pro, from what I remember.
It's kind of funny actually. Like when the LGB name, it was me, Maxaki, and Skytten who created it. We were really good friends, and what it actually is we wanted to create a new game. Like a new FPS game, and we wanted to name it LGB.
Right.
So, and then this MSI Beat It qualifier came up, and we just started. We just said like, okay, let's play it for fun, and we did pretty good. And then Olofmeister came along with that team, but did he play in the beginning of LGB with us? I can't remember.
Let me think.
Yeah, I think he did, right?
Yes, I think he was one of the first members. I think him and Crims were there at the beginning, right? It's the others who came later, I think, like Dennis, and obviously came way later. Sip and Twist, I think, came the next year, right? So yeah, I think he must have been in the beginning, right?
Yeah. So it was me, Crims, Skytten, Maxaki, and Winster that created this team for the qualifier. And then we got rid of Maxaki or Winster for Olofmeister. And then we eventually brought Dennis into the team. So yeah, all of you know the lineup for that. It was me, Skytten, Olofmeister, Dennis, and Crims. But yeah, but to the question before, it might be only Skytten that I just played with a lot in the beginning of CS, and we didn't really play only CS. We played a lot of different games. Just we were really like super good friends. So yeah, that's my go-to person when we talk about the times from before.
Okay, so obviously when we referenced LGB, like I knew Dennis, because obviously in 1.6 actually he was like at a slightly higher level compared to the rest of you. He actually had been on pro teams and briefly been on SK. And I think maybe Skytten's name was like vaguely known, but I know, for example, like as much as people might be surprised when they hear that these players did play in 1.6, no one in 1.6 knew who Olofmeister and Crims were, and no one knew who any of the Fnatic people were, JW, they were around apparently, but they were just names that none of us recognized because they were just in mixed teams or semi-pro teams, right? It's kind of weird when people hear from the outside that these weren't all like close friends of yours or anything. You weren't all like super trying to be pro, because like Crims, Olofmeister, Dennis, these are players where, along with you, have had pretty good careers since then and gone on to be very good players at different points in time. How does a random group of players like that come together? Like, how did you find Olofmeister, for example?
So Crims, we found Crims in a gather channel on IRC. Okay. And his nickname was Twin Time back in the day, and I don't know. With Crims, we just started to play gathers with him, and we started to know him a little bit. And he was a really like happy and awesome guy, and we just started to play with each other. And Olofmeister, he played in Absolute Legends, if I'm not mistaken.
I think briefly, yeah, right? With Ronax, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we won against them in some Swedish qualifier, or maybe it was a tournament, I can't remember. And we started to talk, me and Olofmeister started to talk about maybe him joining LGB. And if I can remember correctly, he didn't want to become a professional player. This can be another person. Maybe I'm just like thinking about a different player or whatever. But I think it was Olofmeister that didn't want to become a pro in CS because he didn't think it was a future in it. But eventually he started to play with us, and we went to we played the MSI Beat It European qualifier finals. And I think it was in the middle of this qualifier, he said like, I really want to play with Dennis, because Olofmeister and Dennis are best friends. So so that's the way we brought Dennis into the lineup. So we just, I think like from the beginning with the LGB, we didn't think about going professional. We didn't think about doing like going into the top scene and tier 1
Yes.
team playing against tier 1 teams, but eventually it happened for some of us.
Right. Obviously, over people's careers, especially like different teams you're on, change who you are as a player and how good you are, for example, playing against better competition. But when I say like you had all these names almost right from the beginning with LGB, could you tell, for example, if you play with like an Olof, do you have any sense for how good he was at the game?
Yeah, we all knew that Olof was a raw talent. He was so good. He did a lot of things, a lot of stupid things, but in his own way. And he changed it from weird things like stupid decisions to actually really professional and good decisions. I remember this game against NIP. I think it was the major, the first major. It was Dust 2, and he was short, and he just saw a head pop up from somewhere, and he just started to spray, like random spray towards the head. And he killed 3 people, and we won that map, and we almost won against NIP. Like these kind of things, he made the things that you might think is stupid to be really, really good. And I think that's the way you can describe Olof. He's not maybe now I don't really know how it is now in TeamSpeak or etc. But before he did a lot of things that paid the price for winning games and tournaments.
Okay. Right, since talking about the major, let's stay on that topic then. So this was obviously one of the first big tournaments. Like you'd had a few, you'd been to that one where it was like that show match, the Tech Labs one. But the major, at the time, people will forget this, but the group you were in was actually, in theory, one of the toughest groups because you had Fnatic, who obviously went on to win the major, but at the time were probably, maybe like the 4th or 5th best team. You had the Clan Mystic team, who had just like shocked everyone by winning ESWC and beating Very Games. And then you had Na'Vi, who was like, admittedly, it wasn't the good Na'Vi. It was the one with like Kibak and etc. But they were still decent at the time. They were like, it's obviously the lineup that you'd played in was that one in Minsk, I think? Mm-hmm. Was that Tech Labs? Yeah, in Minsk. Okay, so in theory, in this group, a lot of people actually would have said your team shouldn't be getting out of the group and, should kind of just end here at the major. And obviously you weren't famous names. What did you think about that group that you got, and was it as tough as it seemed on the billing?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we knew that we could win against all the teams. We all had a very high confidence when we entered that tournament because we played against Cluj-Napoca in ESWC like 1 or 2 months before this major. Yeah. And I think they won like 16-14 on Dust 2 or something. So we knew like they were good, but we can't win against them. And also Fnatic. No one in the team we had was afraid of Fnatic. We knew that we were better from my point of view.
Okay.
And the same with Na'Vi, because we played against Na'Vi in the Tech Labs qualifier or whatever it was in Minsk. But it was a tough group, but we thought we could win the group, and we aimed for winning the group. But yeah, we lost the first game against Cluj-Napoca. I think it was 16-14 or 16-13. I don't really want to know what would happen if we would have won that game and maybe won the second game. Maybe we would have won the tournament. I don't know. But yeah, it was a tough group. But we thought we were pretty confident that we could win that tournament.
So I've noticed
that group. Sorry.
Yeah, I've noticed actually in Counter-Strike throughout history, Sweden is one of the countries where oftentimes the most dangerous opponent for like the number 1 team in the world, if they're Swedish, is the other Swedish teams. Because first of all, like I said, when I was describing the grassroots scene, there's a lot of, at least back in the day, there was a lot of small tournaments, like domestic tournaments people would play each other in. And obviously people played in gathers, etc. all the time. So I always felt like kind of, the aura of even if they were the number 1 team wasn't really there on the players as much because you've played them all. You get comfortable playing them. So they might still be a better team, but you don't fear them as much in theory. So when you had that really close series against NIP in the quarterfinals of this tournament, like on paper, yes, NIP is a much higher ranked team than yours. And actually people thought maybe they could win this major, but it was a very close best of 3 if people don't remember that. were they a team, like, for example, when we've described kind of the rise of LGB, it wasn't very long. We're talking like 5 or 6 months here. And over this period of time, it's really coming from nothing. You know, you're starting out, as you said, in online qualifiers, then gradually working yourself up. I think you only went to a first big LAN, was like ESWC. Like you said, I think that was like maybe October or something, you know, and obviously the major's late November. So by the time we get to this match, you guys haven't got that much experience, etc. Had you actually played NIP much before? Did you ever get to scrim against teams of that level before this tournament?
I think we scrimmed against them a little bit. I can't remember if it was in the Facebook group that everyone is searching pracs in. I can't remember. Maybe it was after. I don't really know. I think it was before. So I think we scrimmed against good teams. But yeah, that game in general was. It was, I don't know. It's hard to explain how it felt. Like when we won the first map, we were pretty because this team, we were kind of random. We didn't have any special tactics we just had a really good communication, and everyone wanted the same thing. And so that is how we became good together. Like everyone aimed to the same level, and everyone wanted the same thing, and we could just talk about what we wanted to do within that team. But in that game, I can't really remember how it felt. I remember we got owned by GetRight because he had an auto sniper and the old train. It was hard.
Yes.
And it was pretty tough that game, but yeah, I don't know. I can't explain too much in details because I can't really remember how it felt like.
Because one thing I remember was like you narrowly won the first map, and then they won the rest of the series. Like, you know, they kind of like did what a pro team's supposed to do and got it under control. But what people will forget is right after that, there was that tournament that was the Swedish Cup, this FI Cup, which is just obviously a domestic tournament. And that was the one where they won in the final of that. But that was the one where every map was like 16-14 or overtime. And that was, I think, even though that was the end of this lineup, actually, that was the first one where people remember like, oh, right, that wasn't just a fluke then for LGB. They're actually like a good team, basically.
Yeah, that tournament. I think we won the first game, the first map against them in the final. And then we were up 14-4. So I remember that was like why we lost that, because we lost that game, we ended up going different ways. I think
that's what spurred the roster move.
Not exactly, but it was helping it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because people obviously always wondered this aspect is like why did you end up parting ways with this team?
I don't know if maybe some people will get mad. I don't know, but like what happened was that Skytten and Olof didn't want to play with each other. Okay. I can say this is from my point of view. If they want to they can share whatever they want later, but what I remember is that Skytten and Olof couldn't stand each other. They didn't want to play with each other. So because me and Skytten was so good friends, I wanted to keep playing with Skytten. And I remember Dennis was trying to fix the problem. Like he worked his ass off for trying to fix that problem between them and to keep that roster alive. But yeah, Skytten just said no. He really didn't want to play with him. Dennis asked me if I wanted to continue, but I said no. I'm gonna stick with Skytten because he was my best friend back in the days, and he still is. So this is what happened, and we had this little small talk, or like we started to fight a little bit when we lost against them in the quarterfinal of the major. Because I said something like, if NIP would ask me or anyone in this team to join them, everyone would have said yes, blah, blah, blah. And everyone started to be like pissed on me because I said that if NIP asked me, I would just leave. So, but yeah, that wasn't the turning point where we wanted to split up or whatever. But I read that Quitten and Olof didn't want to play with each other, and I choose to play with Quitten, and yeah, that's probably the way.
Okay. Because the thing is, then you went and you had this lineup, which started, it was like Property, and then obviously, people might remember it became actually SK Gaming. It was the first SK Gaming CS lineup when we got around to Dreamhack Summer. And this was the team where you joined up with Peter, who everyone might remember from back in 1.6. He was obviously playing in some of the MYM teams, etc. And you were with Wheaton again, right?
Yeah.
And right, so what was the logic on this lineup? Because at the time, this looked like, because the other LGB team went on and was very good when they were at those couple of tournaments early in the year, it looked like you kind of took a step back and you went back to like the semi-pro scene and you tried to find players again and work your way back up again. Was this supposed to be like a real team?
Yeah, it was like SK Gaming was the first organization that I got salary from, I think. So I remember we brought in Pita to be the in-game leader, and when we had him in the team, it felt so different, even from LGB. It felt like we had control over the game when we played, and that was something that me personally I was missing, because in LGB, as I said before, we were just random, we just run around and stuff like that.
Wasn't really like a proper in-game leader or anything in that team?
No, we didn't have I think it was Quitten or Dennis, or I can't remember.
Okay.
But then we also had Emilio and Roke, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, we created that team. We went to Copenhagen Games as team Property before SK Gaming, I think. And we actually played against LGB.
Yes.
In the round of 16 or something like that. I can't really remember. But yeah, we continued to play. We just played with each other, and everyone was really good friends. We had a lot of fun together. But yeah, that team was actually one of the teams that I have enjoyed playing for. Not the most, but they're high up there on my list that I played for, because we had so much fun together and we did pretty good. We didn't do bad, in my opinion. So yeah, that was a team.
Okay, because what I remember was when you were at the Dreamhack Summer tournament. This just shows you how funny like different things can be, where you only look back years later and realize the connections. So what's bizarre is you were in the LGB team, and that was the team where obviously after you left, initially they had better results, and then they did that bizarre thing where they sort of broke up. But what a lot of people won't realize is actually the connection is that because your SK Gaming team was the one that put Fnatic out in the group stage of Dreamhack Summer, that is literally the move that made Fnatic change the team, which is when they then got Olof Meister and Crims, who used to be in LGB, into their team, and they got a lot better. So in some weird way, you sort of actually have a connection there where you made that happen. So at the time, right, it's true, Fnatic obviously had won the major, but that was like, half a year earlier. And they had gradually sort of been having worse results. Like, I think this was kind of like, I don't think it was just this one tournament broke them up, but it probably was like the moment where they were like, right, if it's gotten this bad, that a team that we don't, at the time, no one thought was good has knocked us out, right? In this tournament, I remember, for some weird reason, your team won like all your games you played on Inferno. You beat Fnatic on it a bunch of times. You played NIP on it in that like EDIS Esports Swedish Masters or whatever it was called. Why was this team just so good on the old version of Inferno?
Because of Pita. Pita was really, really good at Inferno, like calling. And I remember when we played against Fnatic, and he had this insane clutches, like 3 or 4 clutches per game that just won us the games. And I don't know, like Emilio, he was really good at holding banana as CT. Like, he was unstoppable at that. And he wasn't cheating, I think. But you never know, right? No, sure, I'm joking. Yeah. No, but me and Skytten as well, if we talk like at the CD side, we have been holding mid from arch and short for a very long time. and we knew everything together, like how we were reacting and all these kind of things. So that was just our go-to map. We're just really good at that map. I think, in my opinion as well, because we had a lot of, like, as you said, and what was it when we played against NIP? That was the Swedish Masters or something.
Masters, yes.
Yeah, we won against them on Inferno as well, and yeah, we played good on that map because that was our go-to map. I think we must have put a lot of hours into it, or something like that.
I remember just before this lineup broke up and you were kind of like wandering from different lineup to different lineup before you joined NIP, there was that brief period where you actually got another old 1.6 player who was obviously an ex-teammate of Peter's. You got Delpan into the team briefly. You went to that Gfinity tournament. Right, he's obviously a player where in CSGO, he didn't really have any impact. Like in this particular time, 2013, people know he was looking for teams and he did used to play the game a decent amount, but obviously at the time, there weren't that many Swedish teams, as we mentioned. Were there problems when he came into your team? Is there a reason why he didn't kind of continue to go up the ladder like a lot of other names?
When we played, like before SK Gaming, when we joined Property with this Pita and Roke and all in that lineup, I started to play op. I wasn't an opper before that. I wasn't an opper in LGB. I have never been an opper before that. And I remember Pita when he said he got a really, really good job offer that he couldn't decline or whatever. So he said, you should bring in Delpan. He's really good, and he was the one vouching. What, vouching? Is that the vouching for him? So we were like, okay, and yeah, we brought him in, and he's a good dude. He's a nice dude, but I don't have the experience that he wasn't the same player as he was in 1.6, right?
CSGO just didn't work for him.
He had a lot of trouble, problems outside of the game with different things, which is not my thing to talk about. But I think just he back in the days when I played it with him, he had to fix his own problems before putting his hours into CS, because that was something that he couldn't handle, CSGO and these problems. So he wasn't something that we wanted to keep. I remember we had some troubles, players didn't want to play with him. We had this incident in London at Gfinity. He wasn't just the right fit for me and Skytten especially.
Okay. Because you had this period afterwards where, from the outside, people would actually assume, it's going to be the end of your career, because you weren't with this team anymore, where at least, there was players you played with, and you had a core, and you were trying to go somewhere. Now you were just playing for any team, and you were on helping a team in a qualifier, and then another team you'd play in this tournament with, and it looked like at the time there's nowhere to go, because obviously NIP has their lineup. Fnatic actually was becoming very good at this point in time, and there wasn't really a third Swedish team at that point. People will forget, because obviously they kind of combined LGB and Fnatic into one to make a really good lineup, and the other players kind of disappeared. So how does a player just be kind of mercenary, playing for different teams, end up on NIP? Because I remember from behind the scenes, it sounded like internally they didn't kick for Flower, or he didn't retire or whatever, until out of nowhere one day where they'd had those bad tournaments and he just decided, right, that's it. And it was very shortly afterwards that they got you into the team. And even though some people had mentioned your name, I remember at the time, a lot of people were thinking right, it's got to be, a lot of people's logic at the time was, they'll probably get someone that they know on a friendly basis, because if you think what the NIP team was like. So most people thought, right, well, that means it should be Twist or something like this, because people knew that he's friends with Forrest or something, I think. How does Maikelele end up being the one to join NIP?
I have no idea, actually.
You didn't have any sort of connections with any of them or anything?
No, not at all. I was just, I remember when I started playing with all these teams, like the SK teams and ESG or whatever, I tried to start going full-time streamer, and I did that for I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 months or something like that. but yeah, one day I came home. I was outside hanging out with some friends, and I came home and I saw that Hedon added me on Facebook, and I was like, "Is this the real Hedon?" I was confused because I had no clue like why he added me, and I accepted him, and he just asked like, "How would you feel about playing for NIP?" And I thought it was a troll. Like, yeah. I answered like it wasn't a troll. So I said like, yeah, I would love to do that, blah, 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 blah. And he said, yeah, I'm gonna contact you later. And I said, okay. And the time I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 weeks before they called me. He don't call me. Like, yeah, I think it was like they lost, if it was against Flipside in a tournament. Okay. I remember watching this game. It was on Overpass, and they lost. I think maybe Hiko played with Flipside as a stand-in.
Yes, ESWC. Yeah, that was the last tournament with Fifth Lauren, I think.
Yeah, and I remember I was at my friend's place. I had my computer there, and he said, now they're going to call you. Just wait. And
I think we got the years wrong there, but never mind that. Keep going with the story, okay?
Yeah, but I think it was that. I think I can't remember. Yeah, but my friend said like, NIP is gonna call you now, and I was like, okay. yeah, right. So like 5 or 10 minutes later, they called me, and I was like, Jesus. I had no I was so happy. I had no idea how to react, and yeah, they asked me like, do you want to become a full-time operator for NIP? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Okay. And
so when you joined, they actually said to start with, not just join, but you're supposed to be the operator. Because I mean, for people who don't know, one of the reasons why it was actually months before Fifth Lauren ever left the team, a lot of people used to speculate he would leave the team. It wasn't just because of his stats. It's because at the time, famously, actually Forrest didn't used to op then. No one in NIP opted except Fifth Lauren, and he used to do it in kind of like what you would call support oping, just like hold one angle or something. He never would try and be like a star op or something. But it was clearly a weak point of the team, and that's why people used to speculate maybe they could change for another player. So they actually, when you joined, they wanted you specifically to be like the main opera of the team. Yeah,
that was my only role. That's what I did when I played for NIP. And I think like when I streamed, when I was trying to become that full-time streamer, I played a lot of CS. I played a lot of CS because I was streaming all the time. And I only played op. Like from when I woke up until I went to bed, I just played op. And that just, I don't know, like in my opinion, I became really, really good with it. So probably they saw something. He's good with op. Let's try him out or whatever. So
when you joined the team, obviously the first actual LAN was the major, which is like a pretty tough kind of like first tournament to have. Did they actually, when you join a team like NIP, and people know, I mean, it wasn't just you, obviously they kept that same 4 players for a long time. It was always the last spot that kind of got rotated. When you joined the team, did they actually give you kind of like spots that you wanted, or let you have say in how you were going to play on a map? Did they just tell you these are the spots you take in and, learn this? How did it work in that sense?
Okay, so their coach at that time was Pita.
Yes.
And me and Pita was really good friends. And he was the one that like giving me directions when I started to play op in my career. He was the one like, you should try to do this and do that. And he found a way that I was good with op, that I could use my op in the right way for me. And so, he was a coach, and he was the one creating all this, what I'm supposed to do in the team. I had a lot of freedom. I said, can you boost me short on D2 and I can go for a peek in mid, and I could do that. It wasn't like go to your position and just stand there. There was nothing like that. And that was pretty good, especially before the update. So it was Pita directing me a lot of times when I played in NIP.
Okay. When, like, at this point in your career, like, when you said before that you weren't really an AWPer, but then you started to do it, like you were doing it in these teams initially, and then obviously you were trying to do it when you were streaming, and then you got brought in for this role. right? Your style seemed to be quite different to a lot of other AWPers, because a lot of AWPers actually are kind of like the one, I mean, this is still early in the game. They're kind of like the 1.6 AWPers, where usually you actually want the guy where his best quality should be like stability, you know, like always hits, you know, this particular shot every time. So you can trust that, you know, if he holds this angle, I know no one can cross. And if he, you know, if he dies, I know if the two people came, for example. But you seem to actually have the style of AWPing, which is actually, funnily enough, since you say you were a rifle player, it's more like what people who are hybrid AWPers tend to do, which is like, they tend to just be like, oh, I'm feeling really hot right now. You know, my aim's really on, right? I'll take an AWP and I'm just going to like peek this corner over and over again, but like really quickly, you know, I'm not going to just hold the angle. I'm going to peek out and I'm just going to try and pick people off really quick. Was that actually like consciously how you wanted to play? Is it just how you naturally played when you started doing it?
I just wanted to play like that. I've never been afraid when I'm playing CS to rush out somewhere and try something. And if I have the gut feeling, I'm trying to follow the gut feeling, because I have, like, for me, I have a lot of like right decisions to take if I can feel the gut feeling. And I've always been that kind of player. And of course, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you're getting stumped. But for me, I had to do it like very aggressive, because I quite enjoy to do it. I really like to like demolish my opponents by going aggressive, because I know for fact that like when I used to do that, I remember teams that we played against, they were like, after the game, they were like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, you went there. What? Like, that's so random. Why did you do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know." But they could feel that I killed them, and I stopped their tactics or whatever. And a lot of times I stopped people, like they had to change whatever they did in game. And yeah, that was just my style to do that. I enjoyed to just be real aggressive, because I knew that would fit the rest of the team. Because yeah, if people can't do what they're comfortable doing, like the opponents, they can't play in their best CS. So that's just my style. Yeah.
So at this major, even though it was your first tournament, you had these two epic series that you played in. You played against Virtus.pro in the semi-final, and that was the one where it was like a really amazing comeback in the first map. And then in the final, obviously you played against LDLC, and that was the one where it was so close that on the third map, you guys actually had championship point at one point in time. I mean, it was only like one round or something, you know, but then it went to overtime, and then obviously they won in kind of like an epic overtime moment, right? In the Virtus.pro series, that was one of the ones where I noticed it was like a tougher series for you. In the final against LDLC, who obviously, interesting enough, didn't have like a superstar AWP, they had Smiths, who was all right, you know. That was one that you seemed to do very well in. What was it like for your first tournament to be in, first of all, the major, and then going so deep and playing all these like epic series where normally you'd think these would be like established teams playing this, but it's your first ever tournament?
I was pretty happy. I mean, it's not a lot of times when a kind of random person comes into a team and just go into the grand final of a major. So I was really happy that I played good. I had some bad maps, but that's me, you know, that's my style as well. I have some bad maps and then I have some really good maps. But in general of that specific tournament, I felt I was pretty happy of like what we have achieved for the first tournament as well. And I didn't know what was waiting after this. It felt like we could become the best team in the world. But in general, I was just super like happy, and I was super motivated to be better. And yeah.
When you played the next tournament with NIP, was the MLG one that was at X Games, it was in Aspen, and this was the one where a lot of people actually consider that semi-final you played against Fnatic to be like maybe the best CSGO match ever, because it was like all the maps were epic, you know. Both teams looked like they were playing pretty well. There was lots of like great clutches and like different maps, different people were playing well. Do you remember it as fondly? Is it a big match in your career?
What did you say? If
the semi-final against Fnatic?
Yeah. If I remember it, if I remember.
Like, is it memorable to you? Was it just another match?
Oh yeah, no. That game was. I think I was so happy when I played that game. I was like smiling the whole game. I think even when we were down in the last game, in the last map on Mirage, we were down like pretty solid number. I think if it was like 11-5 or something like that.
Okay.
But I remember that game, I was smiling all the time, and then that was just it was so funny to play that game because me and the Fnatic boys have never been close to each other in terms of Flusha and JW. But I remember this moment on Mirage when I picked up, like I was 1-2, we had an eco, we had like a CZ and a scout, and I picked up this scout and I no-scoped 2 people and we won that round, and that eventually made us like win that map. And yeah, that I remember that map. I was actually looking at it for not too long ago.
When you played in the final, obviously you played against a rematch against LDLC, and this was another close series, but they won this one. Admittedly, it wasn't as good a series because the third map was like the old version of Cobblestone that I think everyone hated. Just the randomizer gave us that. What was the rivalry of LDLC like? Even beyond your time when they played NIP with Alu, they always seem to beat NIP in most of the big games. What do you think made them a tough opponent to match up against?
I think it was Happy. He was, I think, like the guys in NIP, Forest, Get Right, Exist, and Freiburg, they were not used to play against us like a Get Right in terms of Happy. And
sure.
You felt like they didn't really know how to counter him or how to play against him. So I remember, like, the biggest problem we had was actually Happy, and I think like every time we played against him, he had like 30 frags, and he was insane all the games we played against them. But it was fun because Get Right and Smiths are really good friends as well, yes. And so everyone knew each other, and yeah, it was just fun. And I remember that final as well because that was like my second time overall playing Cobble. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, my second time I played Cobble, and it was in the grand final.
That
was so hard. I had no idea where to like peak or where they could be, or that was so boring to play. I had a really, really bad game that map.
So here's the thing, okay? I'm sure this is one of the moments in the interview that anyone who looks at the timestamps and sees all the things we talked about, this is going to be one of the first moments that everyone really wants to know about Maikelele, which is this. So you played in 4 tournaments with NIP, right? First one, the major. You're literally around from winning a major. Second event was this MLG event, which had a lot of very good teams there, basically had the best teams in the world there, and was like, you made to a third map. You're 1 map from winning the tournament. Then you had that Assembly Winter tournament in Finland, which it didn't have so many good teams. It had a couple of good teams, and you won that one. And then the 4th tournament was this Swedish tournament, iOS Pantamera, which had a very good field of teams, but it was kind of like a weird tournament. Like everyone was in a group of like 5 teams, I think it was. And then, the top, or maybe 6 actually. And then the top 3 went out because it was actually like, second plays third, and then the winner plays the champion in the final, and then is the winner of the tournament. And obviously this was actually the starting point of Fnatic, rising back up again with Olof, etc. But at this tournament, right, sure, NIP didn't do well at this tournament. You lost a bunch of the group stage games to very good teams, by the way. It was like, basically, like, Titan was a pretty good team at the time, Fnatic, Envious. I think maybe the other one was like Virtus.pro or something. It was pretty good teams when you look at it, right? So from the outside, everyone looks at this tournament and thinks, right, if they didn't know anything about internal politics within NIP, it doesn't make any sense why you'd make a player change. Like, one bad tournament doesn't make up for like winning a small tournament, making the finals of 2 big tournaments. So everyone's assumption is either something happened at this LAN that was so terrible that this lineup couldn't continue, or even when the results were really good, there was some sort of friction, some sort of problem inside that just, now that there was a bad LAN, they were like, right, this is our excuse to just remove this person. Like, what would you say from your perspective? Why was Maikelele out of NIP after this one tournament?
Yeah, this is something I have been thinking about a lot in my life. So we came to this tournament, Pantamera tournament, and I could immediately feel something was weird. Something was different, and it felt like the team like tried to go away a little bit from me. Maybe it wasn't in that way, but I could feel it. We played these games against these teams, and we lost a lot of them. And me personally had I had a really bad tournament, and I remember like no one in the team had a good tournament.
Sure.
In general. So yeah, I just felt something was different, like something was weird, something was going on. But yeah, we lost. We went out in the group stage, and we sat down after. We ate, and everyone in the team started to be like, "Okay, let's go. Tomorrow it's a new day." Because I think we came home like 3 or 2 days before, like from Aspen, 2 or 3 days before this tournament.
Okay.
So we didn't have too much time to practice. But yeah, that doesn't change anything. But yeah, we sat down, was eating, and everyone's like, okay, let's go. Tomorrow's a new day. Let's aim for a better place on the next tournament. I can't remember which tournament that was. I think it was maybe Katowice or something.
Yeah, I think it's a major.
Yeah, and yeah, I started to feel like, okay, let's go now. Like everyone was motivated to be better, and everyone was starting to like tell everyone, let's go. Tomorrow it's a new day. Blah blah blah. So yeah, I went home. Everyone went home, and I had my computer at my friend's place. So the next day, we gonna meet up and we're gonna discuss some tactics. And yeah, I went into TeamSpeak, and everyone was sitting there, and it was very like it was always someone late, but everyone was sitting there. I think Hedon was sitting there as well. If I can remember. But yeah, and I went into the channel, and they were like, yeah, we need to talk. We're going to let you go. And I was like, what? I was thinking like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what? I didn't say anything. I was just quiet, and they just started to talk. Like, I was stressed when it comes to games. There was like 4 different reasons why. And
okay.
And I said like,
I mean, actually, wait a minute. One thing I remember was one of the few things that ever leaked out was someone, I forget who, I think someone internally in NIP once told me something like, some weird reason, like because you sat next to Get Right in the lineup, you know, I think he used to always be on the very left end or something, right? They said something like he needs his teammates to be like really calm or something, you know, and if you were like getting really pumped up or angry or happy or whatever, that somehow this threw him off. Was that something in line with anything they said?
No. I like if Get Right would say to me like, can you just try to chill down a little bit? And that's a completely different story if he tells me that. But no one said anything. They just said that I was stressed up and I was I don't know, like not experienced enough. And I was like, of course, you picked me up. You know who I am. It's not like I'm a professional player and I played in 3,000 different professional teams and been to 3,000 different tournaments. Yeah. They knew everything was like, they knew everything about me, who I am, and that I'm completely a newbie in the professional scene, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I remember like I was thinking like, what? I was so like everything just snapped for me. I was so sad. I was super sad, and I didn't say anything from when I asked why. And the only thing I said was you should pick up Twist. That was the only thing I said. I can't remember why I said it, or like, yeah, I just said that and then I just left. And yeah, I was just super sad. I was really, really down for a long period, like 1 or 1.5 months or something like that.
Okay. So is it something where, right, that's what happened at the time, but is it something where you've never really had like a real, like to this day, do you really not understand why? Like if you had to guess what it was, you think it was something like it's weird they would bring up the experience thing, as you say, because they've just played some tournaments with you and actually they went pretty well, you know. Like, if you had to guess, what do you think the big issue was? Do you think someone just didn't like you in the team? They didn't want to admit it, you know?
From my point of view, it felt like someone in the team was jealous of me getting a lot of attention in the team.
Okay.
Because when I was playing for them, I got a lot of followers, a lot of like media time. Everyone was writing about me. All these highlight YouTube videos were created about me, and like for me personally, it felt like someone was jealous of that, because maybe I don't know who, but maybe I took some of that person's like prime time in their career, like to my own, like that I was the one going a little bit ahead of some players. I don't know, like that's only my point of view, might be totally wrong, I have no idea, but we ended up later on let's take that later about what happens.
Okay. Right. So I remember after this period, again, obviously, initially, no one knows what team you're going to play for. You're trying to figure it out. And then people will know that then this Kinguin team was formed. But I actually know a detail that actually probably no one else knows about this, which is I actually heard about that team very, very early, before it was even formed, because at the exact same time, if you remember, was when Hiko was still looking for a team, because he'd had that, like, he was going to be in that iBuyPower team, you know, which was going to become Evil Geniuses. And remember, that was around the time of MLG Aspen, and then they obviously all got banned except for him and Skadoodle. And so then initially, you know, he was like looking at other NA teams. And I remember when he was telling me like teams he could join, he said actually, oh, there's actually a team where it would be in Europe, and it would be kind of like, you know, all of us that are good and have names but aren't in a team. So he said, like, you know, maybe be like Maikelele and Scream, and I can't remember. I think at the time Rain wasn't that famous, so maybe he didn't say Rain, you know. But yeah, definitely remember he said you and Scream were like, you know, these are like the potential names. Do you remember this? Was Hiko someone that you talked to around this time, or was he involved from the Kinguin end or something? Like, how did this lineup come to be formed? Because I know it wasn't necessarily just the players that ended up being, because, you know, you had to buy some of them, etc.
Yeah, it was pretty much a set deal. Like, we were actually, like, everyone said yes. Everyone wanted to play, and I remember it was me, Scream, Hiko, Skadoodle, and Rain. I think Rain was a part of that. I can't remember, but I think so. But yeah, everything was set to start. But I remember Hiko said, like, after we have been talking about this for maybe 2 weeks, maybe it was more, maybe less, I can't remember. He said, like, because everyone was like them, Hiko and Skadoodle were supposed to move to Europe. That's what me and Scream wanted, because we didn't want to move to America. And from the beginning, Hiko said, yeah, it's fine, let's do it. But then he just said no. He didn't want to move. So we couldn't create this team. And that's where me and Scream started to think about and talk about other players. And eventually we ended up with Kinguin.
Okay. So when you look now at the Kinguin lineup, even the first one doesn't look that bad now in context, because obviously, like, everyone knows again that Scream really turned his career around, became a fantastic player again. You're obviously a pretty good player. Everyone now knows how good Rain is, but at the time, like, Norwegian players weren't famous, you know, and his teams had never really done anything. So you look now, and it's already a pretty good core, and you can already see, you know, they're maybe like 1 or 2 players away from being really good. But when you first formed this lineup, because, like, kind of to do, if I do the same rundown there, right, okay, you'd been kicked out of NIP. Okay, some people thought you were a good player. Some people probably wondered why you'd been kicked. Like, as we're probably going to get into, they probably wondered maybe he has, like, a bad attitude or something. Scream at the time, unfortunately, didn't have a really good rep, because people thought, oh, well, there's a reason probably why he isn't in the top 2 French teams, you know, even if he's skilled, maybe he can't play in a team or something. Rain was an unknown, as I referenced. And then obviously Huiton had only really played with like you and wasn't really in top teams. And so actually when this lineup was first formed, people weren't hyped. No one was excited. There was a lot of people who were like, this team's going to be shit. They're never going to do anything. Like, you know, Also, somehow, even from day one, people kind of knew somehow that the team had a lot of money behind it, and had a lot like the buyout for Rain was expensive, etc. So I think that made people even more critical, because then they were sort of like, oh, why are they wasting all this money on this team, of players, when like people heard, your salary was higher than like I would guess like Navi and people like that, who were good teams. Was it weird making the team with kind of people before you've even played a game, like sort of hating on you in a way, right?
Yeah, that was a pretty like up and down period, right? Everyone was like, we had a lot of people believing that we could do something, and we had a lot of people believing that we were shit. But when we created that team, we just started like me and Scream, we talked about like just creating a team and see what we can do together, right? And and we had no clue about what players we could bring into the team, and but it was pretty. That was like I'm proud of what we created with that, because we had a weird lineup. It was me, Scream, Fox, Rain, and Skytten. That was like on paper. That's super weird. Yes. If you think about it, like back in the days. But we thought that we could become good. I think we played our first official game and we lost 16-1 or something. And then we were like, fuck, what are we going to do now? But yeah, we just started to play with each other. And we had some organizations coming, asking us. I remember SK Gaming came to me. I knew them a little bit from when I played with them before, so they came to me and they asked like if we wanted to sign, and then Ocelot contacted me, or Scream, maybe it was Scream, I don't know, and he started like, you want to join the G2, and by that time G2 were like, no one knew who G2 were, so we thought that
League of Legends basically,
they had this Polish team with Mishu and like Kinguin now, right? But that was something different, and we had like that team was. We had a lot of good times together. We had a lot of fun, and it was just completely random because everyone was from different like situations, different teams. Everyone had their own game style, and we just had to like implement everything together, and hopefully it can be good.
So that's obviously one thing that people will wonder about, because I mean, now that we're in a world where like the best team might literally be a squad like this in FaZe, where they've been winning all these tournaments, people actually now will go, oh, well, obviously, people from different countries can play together and it's not a problem, etc. But Counter-Strike wasn't like League of Legends and Dota, where you had these multinational lineups. Almost every lineup had like at most maybe one player, and even then it's got to be like, maybe like a Norwegian could play with Swedes. It's not, you don't bring like a fucking Ukrainian guy into a Swedish team, There's no crazy lineups like that. So when this lineup was made, no one even knew if that was possible. Like as you're saying here, like was it weird to try and communicate in English, for example? Like I'd have to go ahead and assume, like I remember at the time especially, people like Scream had okay English, but Scream, Fox, these players in general probably didn't have great English at the time, right? Was it difficult to get comms in place? How do you get players who have different playing styles to work together? Because I know at the time when you didn't have Dennis, you didn't really have a set in-game leader as much, right?
Yeah, we had Skytten as in-game leader, but yeah, that was so weird. Like Fox, he could barely talk English. We could still communicate in game, but it was most likely B, A, go B, defuse, plant, but that was very funny, because we always laughed about, like we were all laughing because of Fox, because he had such a bad English, and but let's be real. When it comes to CS, you are a lot of times playing mix games, matchmaking, Faceit, ECA, whatever, and you are a lot of times talking English. It's not like a Swedish people playing Faceit, normal Faceit pug is talking Swedish, because maybe sometimes he's lucky to get a Swedish squad in the game, in that match, but in general everyone is talking English when they're playing Faceit, if you're not playing with friends or whatever. So everyone was kind of used to talk English, but not in a team, and that was something that we had to to do something about, to change, to make people feel more comfortable talking it. And Rain had super good English. I'm from Sweden, so I have decent English. Skytten have decent English. Scream have decent English. The only one was like Fox, but we could understand him, and we didn't really have a problem with the communication when we played at all. That was not the thing why we've lost like rounds or games. That was because of that. That was just because we didn't know how to play the game together. But it was really fun to play and talk English. It was something else, and I think everyone in that lineup enjoyed playing.
So as I referenced before, at that point in his career, Scream was in quite a weird position. I mean, obviously he'd actually just had his own teammates banned as well because of the match fixing scenario. So he kind of had nowhere to go and he was in a tough spot, right? From playing with him, what is Scream like as a teammate? Because a lot of people wonder, like, does he have problems following strats and stuff like that? Like, what is he like as a teammate? What was he like at that time?
He's a bit of a baiter.
Okay.
No, but he is a little bit of a baiter. Like when we're gonna rush B, for example, on Dust 2, he like randomly drops his gun on the other side and has to pick it up, okay. To be the last. It was things like this happen in game, but I remember like people just said to him like, "Stop doing that," and he stopped doing that. And anyway, so he was a little bit of a baiter, but a lot of times in a good way as well. Like baiting is not exactly a really, really bad thing to do, because if you have a really good thought, it's good to bait. And a lot of teams uses bait setups, and the only thing that like a lot of times what happened was that since we talked English, like people couldn't like describe why. Like, okay. Can you bait for me? And like they're just baiting. They have a thought, but they can't say it because they don't really know how to say it. So they just eventually baits their teammates, and But that was not a problem. He's a really good teammate. He's funny. He was like motivation for everyone to become better, since in that time he had a really good record of tournaments and finishes at tournaments, and he was a good person. He was a guy that everyone enjoyed playing with, and I think a lot of players like from his teams enjoyed playing with him. I actually remember when we went to a boot camp in Poland. I can't remember if it was Shocks or Smiths, but there was someone of them called him and they talked for 3 hours and tried to get him to their team. So everyone wanted to play with him at that time. What I felt,
was when, obviously, I mean, we're skipping ahead a little bit here, but when to kind of tie together the Scream topic. When he left was basically when the team had actually finally started to have the good results. You'd had like top 8 at the major, and then you were in position to do good things, right? Even though it's true, I know from knowing a lot of those guys who are in the French and Belgian scene, like they nearly all do just want to speak French all the time, even if they they can all speak English, but for some weird reason, I don't know, it's a cultural thing, I would assume, they all just want to be around other people who are French and Belgian. So I can see why, if he got the chance to go to Titan at the time, that he would do it, but since the team had just had these results, seems kind of proven himself, was it a surprise to you that he exited the team that way?
I'm trying to remember what happened, because I remember something happened with me and him.
Off the top of my head, I think when I did an interview with Ocelot, he implied something along the lines of like that they just came to him and said like, we'll buy him for, X amount of money. And that was what famously, you remember, it was like everyone said it was $150,000 or whatever, which was a really big number at the time. Was it something like, did you know he wanted to leave already before he left, or did they just come to you one day like, oh, they've offered me a spot?
Yeah, I remember it wasn't like that, I think. I think he wanted to go there, but he didn't say it. Like, he didn't tell us that he wanted to. But I remember it was at Dreamhack London, I think. Okay. That was our last tournament with him, I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
And I remember, like, we didn't want to play with him. I can't remember why. I can't remember why we didn't want to play with him. But something happened. and something happened between me and him, and I can't really remember what it is actually. But yeah, we didn't want to play with him, and we told Ocelot, and I think like the same day, Titan or whoever it was called Ocelot, and they bought him for like I think it was 50K, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 70K, something like that. It wasn't 150. I can't remember that. But yeah, there was something that happened. That's like why we didn't want to play with him. I can't remember what it is. Because we changed so many players in that team, it's insane.
Yeah. Okay, so another player who was there from the start, who actually, this is the team that basically made his name, is Rain. Because before that, like, okay, I could believe that maybe, like, you know, Rubino or Vendetta knew who he was and that he had some skill, but because those teams never really had done anything from Norway, no one really could know that this guy would ever one day be a superstar player. And obviously, since he's kind of gone on strength to strength, and now he's in this amazing FaZe team. Right, Rain was the player where that was the most bizarre part I remember about this lineup, is everyone knows who Scream and Maikelele are, and to a degree Fox, you know, from 1.6. But when they heard that you're getting Rain, and because of the LGB organization, I think that's when he was on at the time, had got this bizarre contract, the number everyone heard publicly was like they wanted like 40,000 euros. And at the time, that's like fucking, I could probably buy like Get Right for that or something nuts, you know, like it was a really high number. This is remember, it's still like early 2015. So what was the actual buyout in the end, a high buyout for Rain? Why was he such an important player to have? Like what was the logic as to why you needed him?
I remember like after NRP, I was still in a contract with them, and I remember this guy Robin from NRP. He called me like, "Do you want to play with LGB?" Yeah, because NRP owned LGB at that time.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, okay. So he said like, "Do you want to play? Do you want to try out with the LGB?" And I have been heard, and also this guy Robin, he was talking a lot about Rain. Everyone, like a lot of people talked about Rain, like that he's super good. So I was thinking, yeah, sure, I can play, I can try. So I went to Copenhagen Games and I played some online games with him, and he was insane. He was super good. So that's where everything, like that's where everything came from, because I was playing with him in LGB and I thought he was so good. So yeah, and I told Scream that I really want to play with him because he's good. And yeah, I remember also SK Gaming didn't want to pay $40,000 for him, and Kinguin could do that. There were no problem. Maybe I think they might have gone down to 25K. That's just something I can.
Okay. Something
in my head that tells me that it's 25K. But yeah, so yeah, we bought him, and yeah, he's a good player. For me, I always said that he's probably a top 5 player in the world, even when we bought him from Kinguin, when we started to play there.
Because I remember it was like, obviously some of these players at the beginning did last through the team, but what he was one of the players where in one of your first big LAN results was when you guys beat NIP in that, Virtus.pro rather, in that best of 3 at the Faceit tournament. Yeah. And this was the one where he had that like ridiculous round where he went like 1v4 against Virtus.pro. I think it was on train, right? That was the one where like they all just pushed him one by one basically, and he killed them all. So what sort of a player is he? What is he at his best doing? How should you use him in a team, do you think?
You can use him however you want. For us, he was sometimes in game leader, lurker, entry fagger, clutcher. He was everything. He's a complete player. He can do everything in the game. He's just total all around. And that was just something like, yeah, for example, that 1v4, I think it was 15-14 for Virtus.pro. And if they win this round, we're losing the first map.
Yes.
And he just went out CD main on train, and he killed one guy jumping behind the electric box, and yeah, he's just so nutty at the game. He just like reads everything. He's so calm. He was never whining, screaming. He was cheering sometimes some people, but he was just so calm and collective all the time, and he always tried to do the right things. Like for example, Coldzera, you can. Like if you watch Coldzera, he's never doing any mistakes, right? And
sure, yeah.
Rain is kind of the same person. Maybe not now. Maybe he have a different role now. But when we play with him, when I play with him, he never did stupid mistakes. Like went to another side and died. He never did these things. He was just playing total like team play and calm and collected. And yeah, he's insane. He's by far one of the best players in the world, from my point of view.
When you played this match, I remember it very vividly because at the time, like Virtus.pro was still a very good team. For people who can't remember, at the time with this lineup, they didn't really have their slumps until the next years. You know, they were always just like, you know, like at worst, maybe they were like the 4th best team in the world. They were obviously a very, very good team still. And I remember, like you said, Virtus.pro was like on the brink of winning the first map, and then you upset them, you won in overtime. Then they won the second map, and then the third map, the decider in this series, was on cash. And for people who don't know, Virtus.pro basically like invented how you play the terrorist side of cash. They were the ones who had all the mid boosts, and you would take mid control using utility, and then you explode onto whichever site you want to go to. And this was the game where not only did you 16-0 them, but you won 15-0 on the CT side of cash, which obviously in theory that's like where they're supposed to be strong, is on the T side. Was this game just like unbelievable when you were playing it? It seems like I don't know if they've ever been 16-0 since then. It seems like something that just isn't supposed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that game was pretty weird. I mean, I think we won like 9-1 on X situations, like 1-on-1, 1-on-2. But I also remember this situation, like when we had the knife round, they paused the game, and we only had 1 pause per game. So when we were up, I think it was 8, maybe 7, 8 or 9-0, they wanted to pause, but they couldn't because they used their pause. And I said in TeamSpeak, I said like, let's use our pause to let them pause because I don't know. Okay. I said that, and everyone's like,
sportsmanship, yeah.
Yeah, and I said like, no. If I remember Fox, he said no. What the fuck, no? Like he always does. And we didn't, and they didn't get their pause, and I don't really know what to say. We never thought we could 16-0 Virtus.pro, and it happened, and it was so weird. Like after, we didn't know what to do. Like it felt so weird because we played so good, but in one way we played like perfect CS. We didn't lose anything, like a single round against Virtus.pro, and everyone knows Virtus.pro is Virtus.pro. They're like stomping people. They're so good. They will always win one round, at least one round. They will not lose with 16-0, and they did it. Like they lost 16-0 against us, and we had no idea to react. We all were pretty shocked that we won with 16-0, and I remember our coach, he was like, he didn't understand that we won with 16-0. He's like, what? Did we just beat Neo with 16-0? It was just a weird feeling, but yeah, it was a big win for us, and I think for the community of CS as well.
So obviously, like that result, part of what turned this team around and helped it continue to progress was you'd gotten Dennis into the lineup, and he's someone where, as we referenced earlier, you played with him back in the LGB days, and he had kind of a weird story because he was actually one of the players in that team who just straight up quit. Like he didn't even try to go to the other teams. Like he played briefly, for the odd like online qualifier with people, but he literally obviously went and got a job, and people know the storyline. They could have had that team be Alliance or something, but he decided like just before it could have happened, he quit basically. And so when he came back, people actually didn't know, like, was he motivated to play the game? Was he going all in, right? How did he come back into the line? Because obviously you and Wheaton were like friends, you'd stuck around together. People did used to say that Wheaton was the worst player in the team, or one of the players who wasn't as good as the others. How did Dennis get into the lineup, and what did he bring to a team?
I remember Fox and Skytten had some problems with each other, and I can't remember what it was, but it was something in game. It was nothing outside of the game. We were really good friends outside of the game, but it was something in game, and we were in Poland. This is a bit cringy, but we were in Poland, and I was the one that was talking to Skytten, and it was just so weird. And then after this conversation with him, and I remember I went down to the lobby and screamed Rain, and the Fox was, and our coach Dalito was sitting there, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna bring in Dennis. No. No. Okay, so they said we're gonna bring in Nico, and I was like, okay. He was a stand-in for Mouse Sports at that time. I don't think he was.
Right, the Bosnian guy, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He wasn't. Was he a stand-in for Mouse Sports? He was the sixth player.
Yeah, he was the sub, basically. Yes.
Yeah. So I remember he went with us to that tournament after we went to like
it was the qualifier for Gaming Paradise, basically.
Yeah, the best tournament ever. But he was a stand-in, and we really wanted him. But he was, I think they wanted 40,000 for him, euros or something. Okay. Imagine that number today. That would be insane.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
But I remember Kinguin really didn't want to pay 40,000 for him. They really didn't want to do that because they already paid 40,000 for Rain, and we didn't achieve too much before this. And so we and Dennis were super positive. He wrote to me, he wrote to everyone in the team. It's like, I'm super motivated, I really want to play, blah blah blah. And he was just writing and spamming, and we just brought him in the team. And at that time he was the best team player ever. He was so positive. He created so much motivation for everyone. Everyone was playing superb CS, and we had he was really funny outside of the game. We had a really good friendship outside of the game. The whole team. He was the perfect team player, like the perfect player you can ever imagine of all players. He was so positive, and that was just something that we really needed in that team: positivity. So that was. We didn't regret that we didn't sign Nico because we got Dennis, and Dennis is. Everyone knows Dennis is a really good player. He's like a hybrid player. He can do everything in the game. He can AWP, he can rifle, he can USP, he can deagle, he can do whatever. And was just he's a really really awesome teammate. Yeah.
And was he actually playing when he was in this team as the in-game leader?
No, I don't think so. I think it was Rain.
Okay.
It might have been Dennis for a little bit, but Rain was most of the time our in-game leader.
Okay.
Oh no, wait, we had Dalito, our coach. We were the first team that had a coach as an in-game leader.
Coach, right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So in this team, though, I remember one of the weird things about Kinguin, G2, FaZe, like all the different names it was in, is in these teams, it felt like you went like you had certain phases where you were AWPing, but sometimes you just only rifled. So while I realize, yes, Fox is in the team and Fox has been a primary AWPer his whole career. And as you mentioned, actually, Dennis throughout his whole career has always been a hybrid player, usually it depends on the map it looked like, What was the logic? Like, did you purposely just go back to being a rifle player? How would that work out?
Okay, so they did the AWP update. They reduced the sprinting speed or whatever with 70% or 75%, and I couldn't just handle the AWP after that patch. That was just so hard for me to play with AWP. I tried a lot of times, and me and Fox were like sharing the AWP. He was AWPing on the CT side, I was AWPing on the T side, and vice versa. But yeah, he said like, let me just play AWP, and I was like, okay, you can play AWP. So I just started to rifle, and I think actually I'm a pretty good rifler. That's something that might bite me in the ass today, because I always wanted to play AWP in all the teams I played for. Because, like, if I can say it now, I'm much better with rifles, and I've always been better with rifles. I've just been so blind and stared at the AWP so many times, so much.
But you've created a perception in everyone's mind that you're supposed to be an AWP if you join a team, yeah.
Yeah, and also the community.
Yes.
Everyone is like, yeah, Maikelele AWP, you're so good with AWP, blah 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 blah. So yeah, I just started. I don't know. I think I'm better with rifles. I think so.
Okay. So I remember one of the other results of Kinguin, I alluded to it earlier, was you did manage to get Legend spot actually. ESL One Cologne, you managed to finish top 8 there. And this was the one where one of the ways I always remember this tournament is it used probably the weirdest fucking group stage system that will ever be created, where you start out and you play one group and then they redraw the group with different teams. So what was bizarre was the real game that ended up mattering for you was you played the game to decide who would get to the top 8 against Cloud9. And this was the Cloud9 that everyone has to remember were coming in off all those good results. You know, they'd been playing second place, they were beating Envious in best of threes. You know, they were having all these huge results. Like, that was a game as well, I remember, where it was like a Dust 2 game, and I think it was like super close. I think it was like 13-13, and then some key round happened, and you won the map. What do you remember about this major?
I remember Cold Sierra joining the Brazilian team.
Luminosity, yes.
Yeah, and we played against them in the first game of the tournament, and everyone in the team except Fox were like, who's this guy? He's probably really bad. And Fox said a lot of times, no, he's actually really good. Yeah, we had completely wrong about that. He crushed us in that game, if I can remember it. And yeah, now he's the best player in the world. But yeah, and we played against the Australian team. Yeah, and we almost lost that game. Actually, we almost lost. I think we were down like 14-10 or 9 or something, and we were so scared of losing. We were like, no, we can't lose against this team. And I started to play good, and we won that game. Actually, it was Ricky. He was owning us. He was crushing. Right? Yeah, he was so good. And then Cloud9. Yeah. It was pretty fun. That game was very like up and down. We lost against them in Valencia at the Faceit tournament on the same map, but we knew we can do it. It was like 13-13, and I think that was the round where we were 3 left and there were 5, and I went long with the op and I faked, and all the players rotated to A, and Scream and Rain, maybe, I don't know. 2 people, like Scream and one more, entered B side, planted a bomb, and Scream won a 1-on-3 with the CZ. He had like 6 or 7 bullets left or something, and we eventually won that map. And that tournament was. I remember that group stage, the system they had. It was so weird. We had no idea who to play, and we couldn't, like the day before, we couldn't like sit down and talk about the game we were gonna play because we didn't know our opponents. And yeah, that was very big for us though to win that Cloud9 game and go on that big stage. And I still can get goosebumps of entering that arena when they were like screaming Kinguin. Like it was pretty, that tournament was pretty good.
Sure,
pretty fun.
Because a lot of people might not actually realize, but at the majors, you've had a pretty good career, actually. Obviously, as we said, even in the first LGB team, you got a legend spot. Obviously, with NIP, you were in the final of the next major. You had this one with Kinguin. Obviously, you made it to almost the final with the next lineup you were in. Like, actually, the majors seem to be a lot of the high points of your career. Is it different for you when you play in a major?
I just think I'm, like, when I'm on a major, I'm just taking the time and I'm just really, really enjoying being at a major, because you never know when you're gonna enter a major again. And I'm just trying. And also, I am personally playing like triple amount of CS before a major, and I know that I'm motivating my teams as well to do the same. But yeah, it's that's majors is, I think I've been legend on every single one except the last one I was with FaZe.
Yes, except I think Columbus should be the last one, right?
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So even though you kind of sarcastically said before that Gaming Paradise was the best tournament ever, because obviously the reputation among pro players is it was the worst tournament ever. You know, it had all the problems, the flights, people's passports getting confiscated, never paid any of the money, PC problems, I mean, the Germans were even saying the food was bad, you know. Right, here's the thing. Usually, Maikelele, if someone wins a tournament, they go the other way. They go, yeah, it wasn't that bad. Like, if you ever see, like if G2 wins a tournament, even if someone complains about, like, a rule or something, NBK will be like, no, they did a really good, they tried really hard, you know. That's normally how people go. So, even though you won the tournament, that didn't make this a good tournament in any sense?
You were there, right?
No, I definitely was not, thankfully.
No, okay, that was the worst tournament ever. That owner, like the guy, I can't remember his name, but he was such a retard. It was insane. He had no clue of what he was doing. And I remember, like, before the final was like 3 or 4 a.m. or something.
Okay.
Against Navi. Before the final, he I think it was on stream, or maybe I've been dreaming about this or something. I don't know. But he went up on stage and he talked in a microphone. Maybe it wasn't on stream, and he said something like, "This is by far one of the best tournaments ever," and he was completely serious.
Okay, yeah.
I can't remember if it was. I remember he said something about it. He said, like, this is by far the best tournament ever, and then he ended everything in, like, hail Satan or something. He said something like that. Okay. He was just a completely retard. It was so weird, and he was like signing papers left and right about everyone is getting money, but much more money, and blah blah blah, and then he just disappeared.
Because obviously the problem is, like, I already know among pro players, if there's ever any kind of, like, technical issue or something like that, a lot of pro players will always bring that up if you ever ask them about a big loss they had. But, you know, like, my sound wasn't working or something. So unfortunately, considering this was, like, the big event that Kinguin won, obviously, people will think, oh, well, it's just because it was such a terrible tournament. Do you put any stock in this result? Was the actual Counter-Strike played still good?
No. No. It was. I think no one cared about that tournament. Okay. I mean, it was nice to win a tournament. You will have that achievements on Wikipedia, right?
Sure.
But yeah, in the end, no one really cared about it.
Okay. Because as you mentioned, like, the last tournament for Scream was the one where you guys had joined G2 and you went to Dreamhack London, and this obviously didn't go very well because actually you lost to, like, here's the weird part. You obviously lost to Copenhagen Wolves, who had jkaem in it, and then jkaem came and joined you instead of Scream, and then after everything went really great in the major. So was that when things went badly there and Scream was going to leave the team, right, is the obvious way that you get jkaem just because you already have Rain in your team and you have other players who've been around then? Like, were things going badly overall, aside from that one result?
No, I don't think so. But we went into that tournament and we actually thought that we would win it because we felt good at that time. I can't remember what teams attended that tournament, but
there was a couple of good ones. It was like Envious, TSM, Dignitas.
Yeah, but we felt that we could win that tournament, and but no, we weren't sad or anything about the results on that tournament or outside or whatever. But yeah, we eventually brought jkaem to the lineup because Rain was talking about him and he said that he's super good, and we lost against him. They actually knocked us out of that tournament, and I think he was like the best player in that team when we played against them. So yeah, we took him in to the team. Yeah, and he was, he showed everyone what he was capable of.
So when you went to this major, and obviously this was actually like the first tournament you were playing with jkaem, right? One thing I know that's quite weird about that major is that, like, first of all, in all the past years, the third major used to always be Dreamhack Winter. So that used to be at the very end of November, because Dreamhack Winter is always like, 29th of November or something. But this one was actually, like, I think at the very beginning of, I think it was at the end of October and going to early November. And if you remember, we'd only had ESL Cologne in like August. So actually this major was very close to the one before. And so I know a lot of teams didn't get to do like full boot camps, and people were at events like 2 weeks before the major, etc. Since this was your first event with jkaem, did your team actually get time to prepare, and did you have like all the roles set and the maps and stuff?
Kind of, yeah. We went to a boot camp in Berlin before it, and we played a lot of CS there, and we talked about different maps, and so yeah, I think we had a good amount of practice before it.
And did you know that the lineup was going to work?
We had no idea about that, but we could feel like we had a feeling like we always had a good positive vibe within that team. We had a lot of fun outside, like for example, like when we were at boot camps or tournaments or whatever, we just like after our games or when the day is ending, we just sat down, we drank a beer or something like that. We were always hanging out with each other, and I think that like hanging out with each other after the games were such a boost for us. So I think like it felt like we all were best friends, and we all like everyone was like trusting each other when it came to CS, and so we had a good feeling about the major, but we had no idea how. Like we didn't know, but we just had a good feeling.
So I remember in the group stage of this major, so everyone knows how the major ends, right? Everyone remembers that epic game against Envious, but what a lot of people do not know, because they just haven't been back, or they, you know, at the time, people only noticed G2 when you're like beating Virtus.pro, etc. But I remember in the group stage, it was where the format had now changed so that the decider match, the team that gets out second, got to play a best of 3. And you guys played against Mouse Sports, which at the time had Godby, but this is when they just brought Nico into the team as well, actually. So they had, they had a few skilled players, and generally people actually thought that Mouse Sports was going to win this match because, like, they had good tactics, they had a pretty good team in general. And I remember in this series, this was the one where the first 2 maps were like really close. I think it was like Mirage and maybe Inferno. I forget which the second map was, but the first 2 maps were really close. Obviously, you end up winning because you go through. But I remember the first map, I believe, was the one that was Mirage. And this was the one where, when you consider, it was so close, either team could have won the first 2. This is the one where I vividly remember, I think you must have won at least 3 or 4 clutches yourself. And you were only playing with the rifle. You didn't use the AWP at all. Do you remember this match?
Yeah, like it was yesterday. I think in total of that map, I won 6 clutches. And I won like 2 1-on-3, 1 1-on-4. I was like clutching left and right. It was pretty intense game, and they were up. They had match point, and I had Nico had a superb game against us. That Mirage game, He was so good. And I remember me and him had a 1-on-1 when it was 15-14 to them, and I was low HP and I was so nervous. I looked at the scoreboard. I was like, shit, Nico. But and I remember I heard him tap the bomb, and I just holding mouse 1. And just rushed him, and I killed him in the last bullet. I had 1 HP left or something like that. That game was intense. That game was after that game, like we were thinking, like even if we lose Mirage, we would win the game because we will crush them on Inferno. Because we played against them in the group stage on Inferno, and we won like 16-6 or 16-8. Can't remember exactly. But we were thinking like we're gonna win this game, and then we like barely winning the first map. And then they rushed us over on the Inferno, and then we won cash. It was cash last map, I think.
Okay.
But it was I think that was like one for the viewers because it was so many clutches. It was so close all the time, and it was just fun to play that game. Everyone was so hyped. Everyone was like screaming and shouting in that booth, and just happy faces everywhere.
Because after this, you had to play Virtus.pro in the quarterfinals, and you were also in what looked like the worst side of the bracket, because you were on the side of the bracket that was Fnatic, Envious, and Virtus.pro. So, like, that's like the wrong side that every underdog team wants to be on. Now, yeah, we talked before. I mean, it was slightly different lineup because when you had Scream, but you had the famous game where you 16-0'd Virtus.pro and you beat them over the 3 maps. But this one was a way better match. Like this was like a very competitive game, right? This series that you played against them.
Yeah. It was jkaem all over. jkaem won that game. He was pretty good that game. He had some really good clutches, and I think he had so many kills in all the maps, and he was insane.
One of the things that I wanted to ask is, right, there's not actually that many players that have beaten Virtus.pro in a best of 3. I realise recently they've lost a lot of games, so the list might be longer now. But usually the people who've beaten Virtus.pro in best of 3s are like, it's Fnatic or Envious or whoever the best team in the world is. Right? Was it just not as tough for you when you played against Virtus.pro? Usually people say they're like the hardest team to kind of close out,
I don't know, because
you've had a lot of wins against them, right? You had them when you were in an IP, and then you've had it when you've been in the Kinguin and G2.
Yeah, I remember Pasha said something that we don't have a chance in Kinguin. Where he said no chance, yes. Kinguin, no chance, blah blah blah. And I remember that triggered us a little bit, and we just wanted to win against them to show him, prove him wrong. And me personally, I've always had a good. I remember before NIP and all this, and I remember they were accusing me of cheating one game. This is a long time ago in CS:GO, of course, but yeah, I think we just had an anti-game style against them. We were also quite random when we played.
Okay. And
I think we just had the perfect matchup. That was the perfect matchup for us, I think. Because if I can say something, it feels like Virtus.pro made us the team that we were because we won against them.
Okay. And so you just thought, these things are working. We stick with this style, whatever's working for us against Virtus.pro.
Yeah, something like that.
So after that was obviously the match that I think is quite infamous in history now, because Envious obviously won that major. It was a very crucial one in their own storyline. But they were, it's funny it's Envious again, because it's the core that was in LDLC, but you did have them at series point when you were playing the second map of Inferno, and that was the one that was a ridiculous double, triple overtime or something, And this was actually the map, people might remember, where Fox was I think he had a 40 bomb or something on this one. So what was the semi-final against Envious like?
Oh my God, I was... my heart was in 400 pieces. That game was... that game was very stressed. Everyone was super stressed. And I remember I took the blame of losing that game. Because on Inferno we had the 3-on-2. We entered B site on Inferno. It was a smoke spawn, and they killed one through the smoke, and we were 2-on-2. And me and Dennis were left, and he was shadow, heat and potty positions, yes. Behind the 3 boxes and to the left of 3 boxes. And I remember one of them threw a Molotov. Where I was behind 3 boxes, and then I immediately after that I got flashed. So I was thinking okay, I had 100 HP and I was waiting a little bit, and I was jumping back to behind the 3 boxes, and I died from the Molotov, and I was thinking how the fuck did I die? It was just one Molotov. So it took me one and a half year watching that map. And when I saw it, they threw 2 Molotovs. I was blind and I couldn't see the other one. And if I would have know that they would have thrown a second Molotov, we might have won the game and maybe won the tournament. I don't know. So I was taking the blame for that. And that game was intense. It's probably one of the best semifinals ever, in my opinion.
Okay. So when this tournament happened, as you referenced, in the series when you played Mouse Sports, and then especially in the Virtus.pro one, jkaem's numbers were it's MVP level numbers, and if you'd have won the tournament, I'm sure he would have been considered one of the players likely to win the MVP award. Unfortunately, since that was his first tournament in G2, which is a bigger spotlight, everyone expected him to become kind of like we were talking about Rain, become one of the best players in the world. But he is the player where I think it's most noticeable that in all the lineups that you had, G2, FaZe after that, he felt like the most underwhelming player. Something happened to him and he just never was this star player. And what's bizarre is I remember games when you were FaZe where it's not like he was bad every game. Some map, I remember there was actually one series where one map he had like 29 kills, and then the next map he had like 5 or something, you know. So the drop off is so insane. What do you think he struggled with when he was in this team?
I think the biggest problem for jkaem is when we brought him in the team, he was supposed to be the support player of the team.
Okay.
So we wanted Drain to get to start to be more of a all-round player, not doing supportive stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, we were thinking, and he was our support player from the beginning. And after this major, it felt like because he had such a good tournament, and it was a major, and everyone was talking about him, and he was so good, and all these things. He felt like he wanted to change his own game style because he was so good. You know, he wanted to be the best player in the team, if you understand me correctly. And I think that's something like it's hard to change it like that, because like he was our support player, and you can see what he did when he was just a support player. He was the best player in the team. But he wanted to be that player that wanted to rush out first. He wanted to kill everyone, and nothing else. But when he was at his best, he was just chilling, you know, flashing out and maybe coming out as a third or fourth player. Okay. And I think that's something that mentally, like, broke him mentally. Like he know that he can be the best player in the team, but it's so hard for him because he's in different his brain or his mind is like cloven or whatever to say, like in 2 parts.
Okay.
And he also he had a lot of like problems outside of the game. So I mean, I still know, and I still think that he can become that player that he was that tournament. He just need to figure it out for himself. Like, he need to learn what is his best role in a team, and I think that's a support player. To be a support player is tough because, yeah, you never want to be a fullback in football, right? Yes, because they never gonna be the top player in the team. And it's the same way as a support player in CSGO. You don't want to be the support player. You want to be Cold Zero. You want to be Device or whatever. And but that's the thing with him. He's such a good player. He's such a good clutcher, and he's good at this coming as third, fourth player. But he want to be, I mean, the best player instead. And I think that's just something that troubles with his mind or whatever.
Okay. So after that, I remember, unfortunately, another thing that happened was you had this amazing result of the major, and then right afterwards, Dennis basically just says, right, well, I'm off to join Fnatic. Because if you remember, the other storyline that major was because Fnatic lost to Envious in the quarterfinals, they were like, right, well, you know, for whatever reason internally, you never had a proper explanation. Pronax left, and then they had an open spot, and we know Dennis obviously had the connection with Olofmeister and with Crims, etc. Right? I think you've talked about this in past interviews. Did Dennis really just come to you, and was it like, you know, I can't turn down an offer to go join Fnatic, right? It just had to happen like this way?
Yeah. He just called me on Skype or whatever it was, and he said, like, I want to go to Fnatic. Because, yeah, as I mentioned before, he's best friends with Olofmeister, and he wanted to play with him, and he always talked about playing with him, even when he played with us. And I said, yeah, sure. Of course you can go. If they offer you a spot, you can leave. Was no problems or nothing. It was just, he just wanted to go play with Fnatic. And yeah, it was okay.
Because from the outside, like, obviously, yeah, the results got worse anyway with the team. But from the outside, I've often wondered, what lacking Dennis meant for the rest of the team, because obviously a thing that FaZe did. So, I mean, you've said like he mainly wasn't the in-game leader, but I know in some of his teams he has been the in-game leader. And generally, if you look at teams he's led, they tend to be teams like this, you know, where it's a bunch of skilled players and it's not really like super set tactics. It's mainly just being the guy who makes like the call mid-round or something, you know, or says, let's switch this up a little bit. So did in the tournaments later, what was it much of an impact that you didn't have Dennis anymore? Because this is when the team then started to have its problems, right?
Yeah, he had a lot of impact. He was like an in-game leader, but he wasn't on paper the in-game leader. But he always had ideas how to play and what to do, and he was pushing everyone to do better all the time. And he was creating this atmosphere within the team that just wanted, like everyone wanted to become good, and everyone was listening to him. He was kind of a leader, and yeah, he had everyone heard his voice when he was talking. So he was an important player that we had in that team.
And obviously, this is where the player you got to replace him was aizy. And at the time, I mean, this is one of the moves that actually now, obviously, FaZe has become very famous for, where what you do is you just sign a player that's really hot right now. And at the time, aizy was like incredibly good, but Dignitas was having some problems, you know. So it's obvious why he'd make this move, right? You didn't play with him for that long. You played with him for like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 tournaments. And obviously, he stayed in the team until he went to North recently. What was he like from the limited time you got to play with him?
He was funny. He was a good guy. He was really skilled. He was really good at the game. But I remember I was asking to sign a game leader instead of signing aizy. I wanted to sign exist. If that would happen, I don't know.
Yes, because I mean, just to point out, this is famously there were those rumors after Cluj-Napoca, which were okay. Actually, I think it went like this. Originally, it was before Cluj-Napoca, right? There was a rumor where, and this isn't even a rumor, this is true. GeT_RiGhT was going to go and join Cloud9, but then that fell through because they wanted him to play with them at that major, and I think Nip wanted to use him for that major. And the other side of the deal, for what people remember, is because GeT_RiGhT was leaving, actually some of the others were going to leave, and the story was, I think it was like Exist and Forest or something were going to come and play with G2. There was going to like be a new G2 lineup, right? Was the truth to those rumors on the G2 side?
Yeah, because the NIP guys, like when I started to meet them again after they fired me from NIP, they just said like, oh, I'm so sorry, it was a big mistake. Always like okay. we don't understand why we kicked you and blah blah blah. I don't know if that's just because I met them in real life that they felt that I had to say something, to be nice or whatever. I don't know, sure. But they tried to sign me a lot of times. Like for example, he asked me like a lot of times, like, you should join NIP. It's written in your heart that you are NIP. You're blah, blah, blah NIP all the time. And so when these rumors came up, it was true. I remember G2 and NIP was fighting about which like where we're gonna eventually,
whether you'd play for NIP or G2.
Yeah, and I think that never they were just fighting, and then after, because we like everyone said like we're gonna start playing with each other. It was Forest, Exist, Dennis, me, and Rain, but then all of a sudden Forest said that he didn't want to. That he's gonna create a team with Freiburg and Robban, and they asked me if I wanted to join them, and it was just left and right, all different rosters, like between us players. But then nothing happened. They kept playing with each other, blah blah blah. It was just a weird situation for everyone, I think.
But back then, to get back to the point, you did think, right, we've got to get an in-game leader into the team, and Exist is the guy you're trying to get, right?
Yeah, I really wanted to try Exist, but and I can't remember if I talked with him. Maybe I did, but I remember no one else wanted to play with him. They wanted to play with a better player, and yeah, we signed aizy, and that was so weird because G2 gave a player to Dignitas in League of Legends. For aizy or something. I don't know. I was like thinking, imagine to be that player. He's like, their coach, like, yeah, you're gonna leave to Dignitas, and he was like, okay. But yeah, we signed aizy. He was a good guy. He was good at the game, but we had too much people that wanted too much power or to be the star player.
Okay, because this is a question I have about that team. Is Right, okay. A lot of people did used to call the team when it was Kinguin Maikelele's team. Like you, for some reason, everyone thought you made the team and you were the one behind the lineup, you know? And so I noticed, because like as we've discussed here, it's confusing as to who even was the in-game leader sometimes in the team. Like I like it kind of like in football, you know, where they have that term captain, where it doesn't mean you have to be the actual leader of the team, like deciding tactics. You're just the leader who's in charge of, like, you know, if someone has to make a call, you make a call. So in this sense, like, who was the leader around this time? Like when you're making all these moves and roster moves and having different players coming in and out, were you actually the leader overall in the team? Was it just a democracy? Did everyone get an equal vote? How did it run in FaZe?
So, I mean, for me personally, it was kind of weird because when FaZe wanted us, I was the one controlling all the things. Like G2 and FaZe was in a really big fight. G2 wanted $3 million for us, and it was lawyers and things all over the place. And I was the one representing all this from the team, and everyone wanted to join FaZe. And that time was just so, like, for me, it was so brutal. G2 were like, they said like, I will never ever be able to play CS:GO again on a pro level. Because the founder of ESL had said that I'm not able to. Yeah, he said like, you will never be able to play CS:GO again on ESL tournaments. And I remember I had to go with meetings with Ralph Reichert, yeah, and the owner of Dreamhack, owner of Faceit. I had to be in so much calls because I was this close of not being able to play like professional CS again because I was the one pushing that we wanted to join FaZe.
Okay.
And it was just a hard time for me. And because I don't know if I'm gonna say this, but yeah, I don't know. G2 were like, they owe us a lot. They owe us money, and they haven't paid out the money. And yeah, we wanted to leave G2 because of this and join FaZe for free. And that was everything. Everything was started from there. But yeah, FaZe eventually paid 700,000 euros for us, and they saved my career that eventually disappeared anyways. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah, at that time they did, at least. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you joined this team, okay, the bizarre part from the outside is that obviously.
Let me say just one more thing.
Sure. Yeah.
G2 paid all the money, and there is no troubles now. Yeah. So everything is settled, and yeah, that was just that time, and I was blind. Everyone was blind, and in the team, and yeah.
Okay. So at that time, when FaZe signed your squad, right? Yeah, you were like a decent team still. You'd start the results had started to fall off a bit, you know. And from the outside, people might wonder, like, why would a massive org from Call of Duty, you know, that obviously everyone knows has a lot of money, why would they sign a team like this? And I know at the time, like, you know, for example, I think they were one of the ones that was talking to the TSM team before they became Astralis, you know, because if you remember, they had that period where they kind of just waited for offers and saw what was happening. But one of the reasons why it's obvious that anyone would want to join FaZe is from the outside, everyone heard, oh, they're offering so much money, you know, like it's so much more than even, you know, teams at the time. Because people have to remember, 2015 was the year where the salaries just went crazy, you know, every 3 months, it sounded like people would like doubling, tripling the salaries. And it was always best to be the team who joined last in an org because you get the top salaries then. That's how it works, you know. So what was bizarre was, people did think to themselves, why is this team signing a team that's basically not the best, but for arguably the most money or one of the highest amounts of money? And I remember some of the FaZe players telling me during like the bad times later on where, you know, the results were terrible, but they used to get paid a lot. They used to say, who cares? You know, we get paid like one of the highest salaries. And, you know, and they made it sound like a good thing. They were like, and, you know, our contracts are like, you know, 2 or 3 years. And obviously they were making it sound like a good thing because they were like, it doesn't even matter, you know, if we come last in the tournament, we're going to get all this money. Was it some sort of massive investment from FaZe? Then they wanted everyone just locked in and you were going to get a lot, but you were going to be, in theory, you're in FaZe forever at that point, right?
I don't know. I don't know, dude. It's like FaZe. Like when we played for FaZe, it felt like they didn't really know what to do.
Like did they think when you joined the team, like, we're going to have the #1 team and you're going to win all the tournaments, and if we just pay them the most, they're going to be the best?
I don't know. Like, always when you're talking to an organization, you're always going up to the skies with yourself and your team. You know, you're always saying like, yeah, we did this and we will be able to do this and blah blah blah. So they somehow thought that we could become really good. That's what we thought as well. We can become really good. So yeah, but I don't know. Like, it's hard to say. They wanted a CS:GO team. They really wanted to sign one, and these international teams were perfect for them as well, because then they will go out to many more peoples. Like,
sure,
yeah. So it was. They were happy to signing us. I remember.
So I remember, like, this was actually after your time. It was, because I remember this graphic came from ESL One Cologne, but when someone did a graphic where it showed like how many stickers were sold, I remember ESL One Cologne was a tournament where FaZe, went out in the group stage as well, but they had like literally 2.5 times more stickers sold than like the people who was second. And I think the second was like Optic or something, another Call of Duty org. Was it really, like, was the premise of Kinguin when you formed the team, basically, did it work? Like, was the idea that if you get all these famous players from different countries, somehow you do get like loads of fans and you are kind of really marketable? Did that work out, do you think?
Yeah. In terms of stickers, I think we were always selling the most. I think so, at least. I think like the first one, when they released stickers, we were the first. Like that was at the ESL Cologne in Kinguin, our first major. We were like the best selling team with the stickers, and I think that was also because of this. There were some like what is the name? Like you can choose a player from a different team, and you have the highest headshot percentage. And we had Scream in the team.
Right. Yes.
So yeah, we had a lot of stickers sold when I played with this team.
Okay. And was that part also why of all these orgs were always fighting over the team?
Probably, yeah. Money is everything for everyone, right? So that was probably something they was thinking about as well.
So here's the part that doesn't make sense is, throughout all these discussions, people have seen you were very instrumental in this team. You were someone helping bring people in, a lot of players you have connections with over the years. So how does it end up that you get kicked out of what people think was your own team?
Okay, so we had a lot of troubles. We lost a lot of tournaments. We went out in group stages, etc. Sure. But when we were in Columbus, FaZe hired a new guy, like taking care of the team. I'm not gonna mention his name. So he called me after we went out against Fnatic. He called me like, we need to have a meeting with you and ZBM, the manager, and Robin, the coach, and some of the FaZe owners. So I went to the meeting, and they sat down, and they said, "Do you want to kick you or Fox?" They asked me, and I said, "I don't want to kick anyone." And then they said, like, "But you have to choose. Like, if you have to choose, and you have to choose, who would you pick?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to. Like, I still want to play. So, yeah, that Fox, I guess." But at that time, I didn't think either me or Fox was a problem in that team. We had one other player in the team that was more of a problem, in my point of view, that we had to change. And so they asked me, like, "Yeah, but who do you want to kick, you or Fox?" And I remember after this meeting, I came to the hotel, and I was sharing a room with our manager, CBM, which I know really good in real life as well. We're good friends, and I said to him, like, "I'm gonna leave the team. This is bullshit." So I called Rain, and he came to the room, and he said, what's up?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna go away from the step out from the roster." And he said, "Yeah, that's probably the best thing to happen right now." And I was like, "Yeah." So we decided that together. If he wanted me to stay, I would have stayed. But then after that, Fox didn't want to talk to me because this guy that I hired to take care of the CS:GO team, he said that I wanted to kick Fox, and I was kind of begging to kick Fox, but that was not the thing. I didn't say anything. I said that no one of us was the problem, and this guy also started to talk a lot of shit about me, like that he wants all the YouTube content creators from FaZe to trash talk me, to destroy me, and blah blah blah. And I confronted him with it, and I was like, "Why are you saying this?" And he said, "I was just joking." It was like,
okay,
it was a lot of stupid things, and I was pretty sad because it felt like because of this guy, everything got ruined. And but I have me to blame because first of all, if we would have stayed in G2, nothing of this would happen. Nothing. Because Ocelot is a really, really good leader when it comes to teams and organizations. I haven't talked to him for a long time because we had a really big fight because of this FaZe and G2 issue. But I regret a lot that I was fighting with him because of I was blind because FaZe is FaZe, and but everyone in the team wanted to join FaZe, but I know that if we would have stayed in G2, nothing of that would happen for sure. And so I can blame myself, and but I'm also blaming this guy from FaZe.
So after this, you had basically, it sounds like we're just repeating history here. Around the time you got kicked was around the spring, so similar time to before, and then you have all these months where you're just standing in, you're playing with friends, and then towards the latter part of the year, this is where the story's getting familiar, or out of nowhere, you're just playing for NIP again. So at the time, people might remember, NIP had Pitt was their 5th player, and he had this period where they said he was injured, and so he couldn't play. And initially, you just came in for the Star Series tournament, the one that was in, I think it was Kiev, right? And then I remember, I don't think they said it after the first tournament. I think it was after this tournament where they said, oh, we always planned to use him for 4 tournaments. You know, we're going to use him for the next one, like ESL, Epicenter, ESL, and E-League, I think it was, right? Right. How did you get to play in NIP again, even if as a stand-in? Like, how does this move come about?
Freiburg wrote... I think it was Freiburg, Get Right, and one more, Exist, I think. They were like spamming me on friends, like, do you want to play as a stand-in in these ESL games? It was this ESL league, online league. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I played them, and then they asked me, do you want to go to Kiev? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, and they just asked me if I wanted to go. And I was pretty shocked because I didn't understand why they wanted to play with me. I've been out from the game for such a long time, and they could probably find another player that would be better than me at that time. But yeah, for me, like when I've been playing in NIP, I've been playing the best CS of my life, and I think a lot of people can agree with that. But yeah, it was kind of random that they asked me, but I'm glad that I could go with them to these tournaments, and I was wishing for the last spot. I really wanted to have that last spot because of Pith being injured or whatever. But yeah.
Sure. So in the period before you came into this NIP lineup, where there was like a solid 6 months where you basically weren't in a team and kind of no one heard from you again, was it ever a possibility you just retired from CS? Like that was just going to be it?
Yeah, a lot of times. It's pretty sad because I still feel that I can compete at the highest level, and I still do. And at that time, I was thinking that I still can do that. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot of quitting CS and maybe go full-time streamer or whatever. And I'm thinking about it today as well, a lot of times. And I've had a lot of luck in my career to become a pro player first and foremost, but I had a lot of unluck as well in my career. It's hard. I think it's harder than people think to be a pro player. Like everyone thinks it's just gold and all this stuff, money and all these things, but it's much more. And you need to be a certain like figure to like. You need to be a like your personality must be on a level that everyone can accept. And if you don't have that personality, it's hard for you to do something and accomplish something in the CS:GO pro community. But I'm not saying that I'm a retard. That's what everyone says. All the HLTV comments and all these things. But yeah, both you and me know how that is, right? Everyone
it's okay.
Everyone is talking shit about you, and yeah.
Sure. Okay, let's pause the like timeline bit for a second. Let's talk about this topic then, since you brought it up. So one of the weird things is, like, okay, the NIP one we addressed before. Like, yeah, that is weird from the outside as to how suddenly you were just kicked out of the team, especially because later on, obviously, they let you play again with them like 2 years later or something, which is kind of weird. But okay, why is it that in all these storylines, okay, every time you leave a team, sometimes a good team or get kicked from a team or whatever it might be, it's like a lot of other players have tons of connections in the scene. And, you know, like if someone leaves the best team, they're going to get an offer from the second best team. That's typically the way it goes, you know. How come every time you leave these teams, it always feels like you're just in the wilderness, you know, like you just have to start from zero again and hope you can either find some guy you used to play with 2 years ago, like Wheaton or something like that, or Peter, whoever it might be. Do you not have a wide, like you seem like a very social guy. Do you not have tons of pro players who are friends of yours?
I mean, I'm friends with a lot of them, but it's also a lot of because of JW and me.
You have some sort of rivalry or just hate to do each other or something?
I mean, I don't really care. We had some disputes a long time ago, and we were talking shit about each other and screaming and shouting on Swedish LAN tournaments and games, and he just hates me. And
but there's no problem from your side?
No, like if he want to talk.
I mean, JW could be quite annoying, right? I could see reasons as to how someone could dislike him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know him. He's probably a nice guy. I don't know, but I don't have anything against him. I've tried to apologize for what I've done, but he didn't want to accept it, and he started to be very disrespectful towards me. This was at Copenhagen Games 2014.
Okay.
If you want to know. So I know, like, I remember this Reddit thing that Flusha says after FaZe. He says, yeah, no, they're gonna become better because they released a problem. Like, me and Flusha, we have never talked. I think I never ever talked to him outside. I've never played with him. Never. And he doesn't know me. Like, I don't even know why he's saying this. And yeah, of course it's because of JW and him are like super good friends.
Yes.
So all these rumors about me, it's just complete bullshit. That's what the community thinks. And also I have this incident that happened a long time ago when me and Maksaki was starting to fight, and I went out on my Facebook page and I said, like, yeah, I was starting to get angry at my teammates. I wanted to say sorry to my friends, like in this kind of way that I went out public with saying that I was whining on my teammates. And I know, like, if you ask something, like, I don't think anyone will agree that I'm a toxic player, that I'm yelling and screaming and calling my teammates like, motherfucker, what the fuck are you doing, you retard, blah blah blah. Like, if I that's just not who I am, right? And like, of course you get angry when you play. Like, everyone is getting angry. Like, it's normal. If you don't get angry, if you don't whine on yourself, you're not a human being. Like, that's just something that you do when you are a human. Like, you're getting angry if you're doing mistakes or whatever. If you're losing, you're getting angry. That's normal. Everyone does that. I don't have a personal problem with anything. I'm just a normal guy. But the community wants something else, and yeah, the community a lot of times have reached my head, and yeah,
So, okay, aside from the JW run, right? Because obviously, like, if JW hates you, it's going to be hard to join Fnatic, for example. But with the other teams, okay, like, for example, I never even heard a rumor that you were going to be involved with, like, the Godsent guys, for example. And they were obviously, for a while, like, just the level below Fnatic and NIP, you know. And all the teams that are around here, any of the ones that had Twist and all these, like, is there a reason why you never kind of got in with these people? Because people would think that's the logical way back to the top again, right?
Actually, I have no idea. I recently started to play with the Pronax. I'm playing with Pronax and Pyth, and we have been playing with Barbar and Kalle a little bit now. And me and Pronax, before we started to play, we were talking. Like, he said that he didn't like me before at all because of what happened with JW, and I was like, what? What? Yeah, he said, like, that's just something how it is. Like, if you're fighting with my teammate, you're fighting with me. He said that to me, and I'm like, what? I don't even know. Like, that sounds so childish. It's not like I'm telling Skytten to hate JW because I have a fight with him. But yeah, okay, I can understand it in some way, in some degrees. So basically, what I think is that JW have said a lot of bad things about me to a lot of Swedish pro players, and that's just something that's biting me in my ass now, I guess.
Because the funny thing is, I mean, there's obviously another player who famously had a lot of problems with this, which is the person he referred to at the beginning of the interview, is Moddy, actually. And obviously he's kind of like resurrected his career by actually not playing in Sweden. He's gone over to Heroic and he's had to play with Danes. So I know he had exactly the same problem, where basically just because he was kicked from one team, and now we're literally talking like, 7 years ago or something really crazy, to this day, I mean, not to this day, I guess, because he's been in Heroic for a while now, but up until Heroic, that's what everyone in the scene, fans and players, used to say if he wasn't in a team or if he was removed from a team. They'd say, he must just be toxic, right? Is it something about Swedish culture? Like, in Swedish culture, I've noticed a lot of the Swedish players, they aren't like super outgoing, Is that, do you rub people the wrong way or something? Why do you think you don't get along with them as well?
Actually, from my point of view, like from my perspective, it's only with JW.
Okay.
Like, if you, for example, ask Forrest, how is Maikelele? He's not gonna say that I'm a toxic, I'm hating on him, I'm whining, I'm screaming, I'm a bitch, I'm a asshole. He's not gonna say that. I can guarantee you that. He will probably say that I'm a nice person, that I'm funny, because I am a nice guy. I never ever want anything bad for anyone, not even JW. But in Sweden, you have to be medium all the time.
Okay.
Like it's better. Like, if we have a team now, it's better to talk shit about another one it's better to talk shit about someone to another one than to him, because that's just Swedish. That's just Sweden.
So you don't kind of confront people if there's a problem.
No, and if you do, you are a bad person. Like, people think that you're retarded if you do that, and I don't get that. That's just so weird, because like, if I have a problem with someone, if I think, for example, Pyth is doing something wrong,
yes,
and he's doing it a lot when we're playing, and I want to tell him, I should be able to tell him, don't do this, you can do this instead, or whatever. But Swedish people in general doesn't like this, and I am a person that I want to talk to people face to face instead of talking to someone else about another person. I am this kind of guy. I don't like to shit talk. I barely do shit talking. And if I have a problem with something, I can easily say that to that person. Doesn't really matter. I'm happy to do that, and that's for me how it's supposed to be, but not in Sweden. Not in Sweden.
Okay. So when you got this chance to stand in for an IP and you went to this tournament, this was actually a pretty hyped tournament, because if you remember, it was actually the first tournament like that brand new Na'Vi lineup was playing out, where they'd gotten Simple into the team. It had Virtus.pro was there, who was considered the best team in the world. You had basically most of the top teams, except like I think SK was like the only one I think was missing. So everyone else pretty much was at this tournament, and you guys ended up winning the tournament. Something, obviously, winning a massive tournament with lots of stacked teams. What was that like as a stand-in? Like Like, had you actually had time to properly practice? Did you know what your role was going to be in the team?
No, we didn't practice that much. We practiced a little bit, but not too much. It was more like a random mixed team. We had some they went through their default tactics and some tactics, and that was it. And it was fun to win that tournament. It felt so good. The last tournament I won was with NIP as well. I won Gaming Paradise, but yeah, that doesn't count. But yeah, the last international tournament was Assembly Winter in Finland, and winning that tournament was amazing. And I was pretty sure that I would continue my road in NIP, but yeah, that wasn't there.
Right. When you won this tournament, like I said, I don't remember them before actually making the statement that you were playing the 4 tournaments. Maybe they did. Maybe I'm just misremembering. But was it was it actually always said, like you said before, you just initially standing in for ESL games? Was it decided like after or before you won the tournament that you were going to play the other lands as well? Because I know they were all pretty quick succession, right? So what was the plan when you joined?
I think it was after the tournament. They asked me if I wanted to go for a long journey, and it was to Russia, Brazil, and then Atlanta. And I said yes. And then, that was it. They just asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, sure.
Was it ever suggested in any way, like, if it went amazingly, maybe you could actually join? Or was it always supposed to be like, no, don't worry, like the pit guy's coming back later when he's not injured?
Not specifically from the players, but from the management. They a lot of times said that I should be ready to sign papers to become a fully member of that team.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you actually think the time in NIP went? Because just to give people like a breakdown, the rest of the tournaments, like Epicenter was just very weird because that was the one where everyone in your group went 1-1 against everyone else. And so even though you all went 1-1, somehow that knocks you out. So I don't know if that one really counts personally. I think that's kind of just a very weird tournament. Then you had the one in Brazil, the ESL Pro League series, where you went to the top 4, but you lost to SK, who obviously was a very good team at the time. And then E-League was the one where you got out of the groups because you came out second, you lost to Virtus.pro, but then they didn't use you for the playoffs and they just brought Pit back and then they lost to Astralis. So how do you actually weigh up like overall how it went in an IP, and were you surprised that you didn't then get a longer term offer?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised actually. It was kind of weird that they didn't want me to be a full member. I really wanted to become a full member of that team, and I probably asked them. I can't remember, but I think I must have done ask them sometimes, like if I'm gonna be a full member of that team. But I never really got an answer, and they just said maybe all the time, like the players. But the management always said like, yeah, sure, you're gonna be a full member. But I mean, it was pretty weird to play with NIP again. It felt like I was home. Felt like I could relax. I don't know, just something. Especially to win that tournament, it felt like that was something that was really needed. Because, okay, we won that assembly tournament, but that doesn't really count. But yeah, I was happy to play with them again, and I was sad that I couldn't stay there and continue my road with them.
Was it a different vibe and atmosphere the second time you were in the team from the first time?
I think it was exactly the same. Except that I've been a pro player for a longer time, since the last time I played with them. I had more experience and all these kind of things.
Even though obviously in Kinguin and when it was G2, you had some results that arguably were as good or better than an IP. Why do you think when you were in an IP, like what worked about you in that team? Because obviously they had some pretty good results in almost every tournament you played with them.
I think we're just completing each other. It feels like I made, like for example, Freiburg. he had a terrible like period of time when he was playing before I like when they played with Pyth, and everyone was like writing like change Freiburg and blah blah blah, Freiburg is a problem. But as soon as I joined and I went to the tournaments with them, it felt like he was more like, I don't know, he could breathe more when he was playing. He played super good, especially on that tournament in Kiev. He was so good at that tournament. He created so many opportunities to win rounds, and it feels like I am something that makes them better as well.
Okay.
But I don't really know why they don't want to play with me.
So you never did. Obviously, the problem with the second situation is because technically you were there as a stand-in.
Yeah.
Well, they don't even have to give you an excuse. Then they can just say, "Oh, the other guy's coming back." You know. Although obviously Pitt didn't exactly stay that long himself anyway, and he stayed for a couple of months. Did you ever get any sort of a reason or any sense from any of the players as to why you didn't just continue with Nip there?
No. Nothing at all. I think I haven't talked with them since then. I don't think I've talked with anyone since I was standing there. But yeah, they went to that Oakland tournament and they won with Pitt. But I had the feeling that if I would go with them, we would have won as well. That's what I was thinking. I just had that feeling. But they didn't say anything, and I mean, I can understand in some way that I was just a stand-in, and I can't say too much about it. Like, of course, I was just a stand-in, but because we played so good, and it felt like I was creating more, like I was creating a better atmosphere for others as well. It felt natural playing there and for them as well. But I don't know.
So then you had this weird scenario where you ended up back with your old mates from FaZe, where you made this Dignitas team with Fox and jkaem, and Peter obviously magically came back into the storyline because he was starting to play again and was going to be in-game leader. And then you had Rubino, who obviously at the time it was quite a big catch to get him because he was pretty good when he was over in the North team, you know. Right, on paper, this lineup looks pretty decent, right? This looks like kind of like we're starting over Kinguin again and we're going to try and build our way back up again. How did this team come together?
Me, jkaem, and Fox wanted to play with each other again. No one had a team. So we decided to start playing with each other, and we wanted an in-game leader, and I said Pita, because Pita is a good in-game leader. Not going to take that from him. He is. He's maybe not the best player when it comes to aim and etc., but he's not a bad player. He's a really good in-game leader. But yeah, we created that team, and it was pretty fun from the beginning. It was pretty fun to join the TeamSpeak server and to talk with old teammates. It was a good feeling.
So how did this team end up collapsing in again? Because obviously this is the one where you and Peter were the ones removed. So what happened?
They didn't want to play with Peter. That's the way.
So how does that affect you then?
I didn't think it was a problem.
Okay.
I wanted to continue.
I've got a question for you, Maikelele, right? In these scenarios, you notice in a lot of these situations, it sounds like you're often against like making roster moves, or you think that like, you know, if you like a player, you just want to play with them. Why put yourself on the line for someone else here? Like in the other story, when someone says you want Fox, why don't you just say, well, in that case, you know, I have to say Fox, don't I? I mean, I can't pick myself to get kicked. In this case here, if they say we're going to kick Peter, we don't like him, why don't you just say, okay, well, I mean, I like him, but that sucks. Then I guess I'm just going to have to play without him. Why stick with him in that sense? This is something my girlfriend is angry at me. That's what she says. Okay.
No, but
are you overly loyal to people when you like them?
Yeah, I think I am. I want to treat I want to treat people good, and then if I'm friends with someone, I don't want to go behind their backs, and I don't want to do decisions that can trouble the friendship or whatever. And this is something. This is probably a problem for me, because just look where I am at the moment. But yeah, loyalty is number one for me. But
you know, it's kind of the opposite for most pros, right? Like, especially because it's people's jobs. A lot of people have that. In fact, that's the famous thing everyone says, right? It's just business. You know, you have to do what makes sense business-wise, right?
Exactly. And yeah, I've been thinking about this, and if I'm getting into the pro scene again, I will be more quiet, and I will not be the one, like, I've always tried to be some kind of a leader in a team to help and make decisions about whatever, organizations, players, whatever, you name it. But I've decided that if I'm getting a chance into the pro scene again, I will just be a player, and I will be quiet, and I will do like every other player are doing. With that, I don't mean that I'm gonna talk shit behind someone's back. I'm just gonna be quiet and play. Since it's the opposite now, and that have been bad for me. But yeah.
Sure. So then you went over, and not so long later, you got to join up with the Red Reserve team. And I have to say, the interesting thing about this team is I know now from people seeing you play with them and seeing this tournament in a couple of online tournaments and the odd LAN, people now consider some of them like good players, and you know they've been part of kind of the rumor mill when a team's changing players. But before this, like, I only watched the top tournaments. I'd never heard of any of these players. I don't think I'd ever seen a single one of them in any league or LAN or anything. How did you get involved with this team?
Two of them is from the city I'm from, Eskilstuna. Okay. So I've always wanted to have a team from the same city. I don't know why. Just something from when I was a kid, I guess, to have a team from the same city, to, I don't know, like go for quick boot camps or whatever. And Freddy Frog is good. And yeah, I gave it a chance, and yeah, we started to play with each other, and we did pretty good. But yeah, Red Reserve didn't want us. Their investors dropped off, and they didn't have money, so we just split up the roster, I guess. Some of them stayed, and yeah, I didn't really know what to do at that time as well, and I still don't really know what to do with my life.
So obviously the best result with Red Reserve was where you went to the Dreamhack Valencia tournament. Obviously a fond location for you, because that was obviously where you were back when you beat the VP team, I think. Wasn't that in Spain, actually, that Faceit tournament? Am I thinking the right one? Yeah, it was in Valencia, right? Yeah. And so obviously in the final, you got to play against an IP, which if it was a movie would be a pretty good scene, obviously, like you're supposed to play against them to try and win the tournament. Was it actually a good match? It looked like they dominated.
Yeah, they did. I'm not gonna complain or anything about it, but we had a we played like against CLG the day before the final day, and against Heroic we had super tight games. All maps was super tight, and we didn't get much time after that to play against NIP. Like, we didn't have time to do anything. So I'm not complaining about that, but we were a bit tired, and then yeah, they were the better team that day.
So obviously it wasn't that long ago, to be fair, that like the Red Reserve lineup had to break apart and lost the sponsorship, etc. At the moment, are you just a complete free agent? You don't have any connections. You don't know where things are going. I mean, you made it sound throughout the interview when you've been talking like you have been thinking a lot about your career and what's going to happen, and you want to be a pro player again, right?
Yeah, I want to be a pro player, and I know that I can be a pro player. I know what I'm capable of. But I need to find myself when it comes to teams. At the moment, I am playing with Pronax and Pyth a little bit, just to keep up, and they're good as well. And I've always wanted to play with Pronax because, he's the great game leader and all these things, and I want to learn, and I still can learn, and so I want to be a pro player, and I'm gonna fight to be a pro player. But you never know what happens in life, right? You don't have it on paper, and everything can happen, everything can change. But hopefully I can do what I love to do, and that is to play CS. And I want to get those headshots.
And let's imagine things go well, you join team. Maikelele, from this point on in his career, is going to be a rifler. You're not going to be associated with the AWP as much anymore. Do you think you'll always be an AWPer in some sense?
I mean, I would like to be a rifler only, maybe a secondary AWPer, but you never know what happens. I will see. If I don't really care what I'm gonna be at this moment. I'm not desperate, but I don't really know. If a team asks me, you want to join, and they ask me you want to be the support player, and I can be yeah, sure, why not? Because why not? Why not try it, and why not learn new things? And if they want me to be an AWPer, yeah, sure, why not? So we will see what happens, and we will see where I will end up, and if that will happen. I don't know. We'll see.
So, okay, one of the themes of this interview has been, like I said when I said in Dignitas, out of nowhere, Peter just pops up again. He has been throughout your career in different points, playing with you, coach of you, playing with you again, right? Clearly, Peter sees something in you. He thinks you're a good player in some sense, because I remember when he was the coach of CLG, wasn't there a rumor that he was trying to get you to join CLG, the American team? Wasn't there something along those lines?
I was supposed to go on to attend a major with them.
Okay.
Maybe E-League. I can't remember. But yeah, they asked me if I wanted to come there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks maybe. But I can't remember why that never happened. I think it was this op thing,
Yes.
They had JDM, and probably he didn't want to play with me because he was thinking that he didn't op. Whatever. I don't really know. But yeah, I don't know.
Because this is one thing that I think is actually maybe the missing element of your career. While I definitely understand why all European players, if they have the chance, just stay in Europe and don't go to America, because if you go to America, you're not going to be with your friends and family. You actually have a disadvantage compared to every other pro player. I think it's one of the things about Counter-Strike that's pretty cool as an esports game. You don't have to go and live in a team house and be away from family for a long time. That's clearly an upside. But when you've had these periods in your career, obviously, especially after FaZe and now after Red Reserve, a lot of people would wonder, we know that North American teams import players. This Ange guy plays in NRG. There've been a whole bunch of players have gone to NA. Why has Maikelele never been in an NA team? Have you had the offers aside from that one?
Yeah, I've had plenty of offers, but I've said no to everyone because I don't really want to move to NA.
Not even if it gives you some special chance to show, be in a better team and show your skills or something. You couldn't just do it for 6 months. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I've said no to everyone because I have a girlfriend and we live with each other. Okay. And my family's here, so I've never really wanted to move there. But if I could bring my girlfriend, and then maybe I don't know. Maybe if I could do that, and if I could take my girlfriend with me, but that's hard as well, Sure.
Where she's gonna live in a basement somewhere.
Exactly. Who knows?
Five sweaty gamers.
Because obviously, what's bizarre about your career is most Swedish players just spend their entire career in a Swedish team. So they're in an IP or they're in Fnatic, and then if they're not in Fnatic, maybe they join Godsent, and then, there hasn't really been a lot of movement for Swedish players, but you've now been in all these different teams all over the place, and you've had a very sort of winding career, and you've definitely had some really great highs, and you've had some very weird lows. How do you feel about your CS:GO career at the moment? Sounds like you feel like it's like, even, I don't just mean just because you want to play right now, but it sounds like you still feel like something's missing from it.
Yeah, I want to settle down. Like, I want to settle myself into a team and just be there. You know, I'm like, when I play with Kinguin G2 FaZe, we changed a lot of players, and I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that. I want to keep, like, I want to be a Virtus.pro, you know. I want to be in the same team and to work our asses off to become better, and that's something that is missing from my point of view. Like, just to have a team and play together for a long while, and yeah, that's something that I really want to have in my life, in my career.
If someone only became a fan of CS, like let's say a year ago, and so they haven't, you know, most of the history we're talking about, they don't remember. If you could pick out like one match, and if they go and watch this match, this will show you like the real Maikelele, like the best you played, or like a really big match that you were really good in. What would you pick out as like a classic for them to go and watch?
Probably, yeah. Does it have to be a win?
It's up to you. No, it could be any type of match, just to show off what you can do, your skills, kind of like who you are when you're at your best.
Probably the final map, Dreamhack Winter Major with NIP.
Overpass. The Overpass game, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably that one, or Mousesport's game on Mirage.
Cluj-Napoca one, yeah.
Yeah, there you have two different Maikeleles, one Opera and one Rifler.
Because who like, when you're at your best, what type of player do you think of yourself as? Like, what type of role do you want to have? How should you be playing?
That's hard to say. I like to be aggressive. I like to do the unexpected things that people don't think that they're gonna happen, but I'm gonna be there, you know. And that's something that, let's point it out. That's also some, like, in some weird way, me and JW maybe.
Okay, you've both got the same playing style.
At least we had. I think we had it. Yeah. So, but yeah, the unexpected play style.
Okay. Right. At the end of this interview, do you have like a final message for people watching, or someone you want to thank or say hello to?
I just think I want to thank Skytten for being such a good friend, and yeah, he's a really, really, really good friend of mine, and I can't thank my girlfriend, I can't thank all my family, etc. But I wanna point out Skytten to be one of the most amazing people in this scene that I've ever known. He's a true friend. He always wants the best of me, and he knows me better than anyone else in this scene. And yeah, I don't know, to all the haters out there, I don't really know if I'm gonna say something to you, but yeah, let's keep on commenting on HLTV.
Okay, tack så mycket.
Thank you, Thorin. It's a pleasure.
Hi, this is Gertrude and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.